So we're going to start the workshop part of our evening here at 7 o'clock, and then at 7:30 we'll move into our regular agenda. And for workshop this evening, our city planner, Natalie Quinn, is going to share with us some insights on something called complete streets. I didn't know there was such a thing as incomplete streets, so we'll learn. And then I think you're going to share with us just kind of a quick status on what's happening with the Fishkill Corridor Committee.
I tie it in at the end.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
Great. Okay, so we'll start. Complete streets. I assume at this point that everyone has heard of this term, but maybe not.
I have not.
I will define it. There we go. So City of Beacon actually has a complete streets resolution that was adopted in 2016, setting guidelines for complete streets in the city of, I said city of Poughkeepsie, didn't I? City of Beacon. I just came from there.
Strike one.
And yeah, don't keep track. And so I think the first whereas clause in your own resolution, I think is, there's a number of definitions. It's kind of like sustainability and things like that you see different definitions, but they all come down to the same thing. And what I'll summarize this is looking at all users of the street in all modes of transportation, right? I think I wanted to do this presentation today because I think it ties into a lot of what we've been talking about with the parking regulations and aspects like that, in terms of we are kind of in a mindset shift in the nation of going from thinking about automobiles and how to get automobiles from point A to point B and where to store automobiles to what we know are all the other users of the street and how they may use the street in the public right away. And I think that was captured in the resolution and the guidelines. So there are 5 principles that to the Beacon Complete Streets regulations, and we'll kind of go through the first 4 of these in a little bit of detail. So like I said, the key aspect is designing for all users, right? Pedestrians, ADA accessibility, bikes, buses, and car traffic as well, right? Deliveries, trucks, if you're in industrial areas, that's a user of that space. So you kind of have to analyze the space that you're in and think about who the users of those streets are before you start thinking about, is my street complete or incomplete? And then so this comes into context sensitivity is the second principle of your own complete streets regulations, which I think gets into a little bit of thinking about those users, right? There's a number of tools that we'll go through in a minute for how to make streets more complete. Not all of them are feasible or appropriate for all streets or necessary, right? Depending on who is using those streets. So the image you see on the left there is kind of, it's like all of the things thrown on there, right? There's the brick crosswalk, there's bike lanes, there's sidewalks, there's street trees, there's a bus, there's cars. So this is kind of all users in this space. That's a very wide road. Not all roads are that wide, and so you don't always have all that space to think about, so sometimes you have to make trade-offs. And then again, on the right, just context sensitive is not all areas or levels of traffic or roadways demand a bike lane or demand sidewalks, depending if it's a rural character or suburban character, kind of what that neighborhood is or what that area is in the urban form there. A complete street may be different depending on the context. So I pulled these images straight out of Dutchess County Transportation Council does a lot of work on complete streets, and we'll get into some of the work they've done here in Beacon, but some of the components of how do we start to think about what a complete street is. So I think top left corner is thinking about how do we connect this into networks? What are the connections between different roads and different modes of transportation, as well as what are the networks connecting different assets within the community? A tool that I think gets talked about a lot is in the top right-hand corner is a road diet, what we call. So we have found that a lot of roadways are built with excessive width of lanes, right, where a car is maybe 10.5 feet wide. and could survive with, or less than that, actually, could survive with 11 and a half or 12-foot lanes. We sometimes see 13, foot lanes. That's kind of the picture in the right-hand side of that top right corner, or the left-hand side of that top right corner, where they're just an excessive amount of roadway, where there could be other amenities in that space, a median to make it more easy to cross, sidewalks, on-street parking, which slows traffic. Bottom left is very often used tools of high visibility crossings, whether that's just simply striping the crosswalk, which you'd be surprised how often that is absent from roadways, just having that marked out, to bump outs for buses, signage, just kind of saying yield to pedestrians. And then the other aspect of comfort and interest, I think we get into talking about a lot with the planning board, is the urban form along those streets, and how is that creating a space that makes the street feel comfortable and interesting to walk along, which makes it complete. And then this, I love this slide this is from DCTC's presentation as well, just about how important the details are, right? So top left corner, yes, that is a striped crossing. It is about, I think, 45, 60 feet, it's a significant length. So, and the curbs are very rounded, so it incentivizes cars to kind of just spin around that corner really quickly. So the tool is there, but it's not properly implemented in order to, this is an intersection designed for cars, automobiles with pedestrians. That's kind of the afterthought there, is what that image is. And then I think we talk about this more and more these days about ADA accessibility in these areas, and this comes down to everything about proper drainage in locations of where water is puddling that can make it impossible to use the ramp that we've put in place for those folks who may have mobility challenges, and then disrepaired sidewalks, as well as amenities for other transit modes like bikes or bus shelters. So the little details is what it really comes down to. The other aspect, this is kind of getting back to your own Complete Streets resolution, is that complete streets should be routinely addressed by all departments. And that includes the planning board listed here, kind of thinking about how to use complete street practices at a regular part of everyday operations. The images in the bottom here are from the current project that the city is working on right now for Teller and Fishkill Avenue, in terms of they are making what I would say complete street improvements along that roadway. Those plans are available on the city's website. So those are just some images there about how the city is integrating this work in their road improvements. And then I think one of the, I guess it's not so recent, it's 2018, but where Dutchess County Transportation Council assisted City of Beacon in thinking about a complete street on Beekman Street. So I just wanted, there is a report and recommendations for this, both for, and what I think was really interesting about this study is it's integrated both within potential improvements in the roadway, in the street, and then those recommendations were also taken into the linkage district zoning code as well to, again, set the parameters for urban form in this area to help make this street more complete. And then this is my quick update on, there's an ongoing effort right now for the remainder of or all of Fishkill Avenue. Like I said, there's a portion of Fishkill Avenue that is under current or will be under renovations, but there is a committee. I think this matter was brought to this board towards the end of 2023, where I think they started thinking about zoning regulations for this district. And I think where that went from there is, let's take a more comprehensive look. Let's do a committee that's going to look not only just at zoning, but also things like complete street improvements in this area, connectivity to, I always say it wrong, Matawan, the street that the high school's on, and Camp Beacon, Matawan. So connections to that, again, thinking about connections between networks. So this committee's in the very beginning. They just started meeting in, I think they've had 3 meetings so far. There is a page on the city's website, Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee, where you can kind of go read about who's on the committee, what they're doing, and then there's a means for us, we're trying to get materials up there posted. So right now it's just the committee's been meeting, and what I'm trying to show here is doing a lot of existing conditions, like paying attention to the details of what's in place now, what the zoning is now, what are the impediments to pedestrians and things like that in the area. So they're in the kind of information collection phase. But happy, I'll do another, I think, update for you all once they get to the point of having recommendations. So
Great.
that is my very brief overview of Complete Streets.
Yeah, that's helpful. I'm just curious, kind of tying, and I like that slide you had there, just in terms of whole city responsibility around this concept, and of course, others relative to zoning. Just tying together a little bit, for example, let's use 52. If there were to be improvements, obviously it's the city's responsibility to follow our own charter, right? When thinking about how to re-plan like that route.
Yeah.
Intersections, crosswalks, all of the things you talked about. Talk a little bit about them as, for example, applications come to the planning board. These principles tie into our purview, just in terms of how they might play into what things we want to look out for in our reviews as they relate to Complete Streets.
Yeah, I think the planning board in reviewing site plan concepts, right? So I think when Complete Streets is being discussed, it's often focused on the public right of way, which is the responsibility of either the municipality or the transportation, NISDOT or entities like that. But I think what we were talking about earlier is that comfort and interest is largely shaped, of a roadway, is largely shaped by the urban form that is along it. So I think what the planning board can look at is placement of buildings becomes very important. When someone is walking down the street, what are they next to? Are they next to a building, looking into shops, looking into windows, or are they next to a parking facility? Is it well lit? I think you can think about, is there shade trees? Are there trees that are maybe provided on individual parcels that will provide shade for, if there is a sidewalk, pedestrians on that sidewalk? I think another thing that comes into play quite often is turning vehicles, or turning movements for vehicles, right? And that comes into the kind of pedestrian safety and thinking about the pedestrian.
Yep.
How many times do they have to cross over an area where they have to be aware of where cars are coming from and how fast they're going to be coming and if they're going to see them or not? So I think what we talk a lot about when looking at site plans is limiting the number of curb cuts where vehicles are entering or exiting a private parcel as a means to impact the street. And then landscaping, right? I think we talk a lot about landscaping on the front side of parcels and how that will create a more enjoyable walking environment for pedestrians who may be using that sidewalk.
Yeah.
And then Route 52 is, there is only sidewalk on one side. It is a limited road width. It's not like there's extreme amount of excess roadway there necessarily to be adding in everything you want to add in. So I think what this committee is really trying to focus in on now is the users of this space and the land uses in this area, right? There's a lot of industrial land uses that require trucks and stuff. So thinking about the appropriate road widths for that, and if you only have so much road space to play with, what are the amenities that are most important for that roadway?
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Yeah, a little bit. So just going a little bit deeper, for example, would the committee have purview over, like you mentioned, street trees, for example, right? Over recommendations to the city, for example, that any improvements that happen include a sidewalk on the east side, street trees on both, or is that, I'm just curious where the city kind of purview or responsibility stops and then the private property owner begins.
Yeah.
Right? So just in terms of what that means in terms of cohesive placemaking. Right?
Yeah, it's hard. Well, first I'll just say, so the committee, the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee is very much just a non-decision-making body, right?
I know. It's
They will
always
create recommendations
recommendations.
that go to the council and to the administration to consider. And then, this is maybe where we bring the attorney in. The municipality should be looking at just the public, like their their ability to make improvements themselves, I think, stops at the public right-of-way, right, where the
Sure.
private boundary
Sure, sure,
starts. Then you use zoning as the tool.
I totally get it. So
Yeah.
then what I'm hearing is this is a lot like what we experienced on the comprehensive plan committee. This committee specifically could make recommendations to the city for, a comprehensive improvement to the full public right-of-way that includes X, Y, and Z. And then it's up to the city as to whether they're going to adopt that part of it, right?
Yeah,
And then, yes, and then also they have purview over use, zoning, bulk, height, and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's going to set the new zoning.
yeah.
Sort of an extension of that. And I'm assuming this is still in context of complete streets. And I'll just say this, rather than a question, a more of a statement. I hope that also they'll be looking at just appropriateness in terms of aesthetics similar to what we looked at in terms of Main Street, and either some consistency or some guide rails, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's definitely a topic of conversation. I think the interesting aspect is that Fishkill Avenue, Route 52, is not Main Street, right? I think there could be similarities between it, but as
Totally.
a neighborhood within the community, it kind of functions different, has different users. So I think the committee's trying to be sensitive to that. And I think there's a lot of good aspects about like the design guidelines and
Sure.
the feeling of walking on Main Street that you would like to bring to Fishkill Avenue as
Yeah.
much as appropriate, but
Not to say, you want a complete facsimile of Main Street. It's
Yeah.
more, there is ample opportunity to improve, for example,
Absolutely.
tree cover.
yeah, absolutely.
That's always, no matter whether it's
Or
Main Street here or
sidewalks,
52.
widths that are
or
more than 2
sidewalks,
feet,
right.
that people feel, that aren't
Yeah.
blocked by mailboxes and hydrants
If the
and,
character
Yep.
becomes a little less industrial, commercial,
Right,
you know,
yeah,
churches, places of worship, apartment buildings,
right,
and there's gonna be more demand for those kind of amenities.
exactly. Yeah, residential even, yeah.
I mean, I still see people walking up and down and biking up and down that road all the time, that use it now,
Yeah,
so
it's a-
it's even.
it's a conduit,
there's
for
yeah,
sure.
Yeah,
A lot of people that can't own cars who live nearby,
Mm-hmm.
and the services are that they are, what used to. There are a lot of people that can't own cars that live on Fishkill
Yeah.
and walk there as part of, exercise and a lot of other things. And I think it's going to be something we should be sensitive to.
absolutely.
I have a question, and I don't know if it might be more Jennifer's view of the Route 52, like how, there's this, effort going on to rethink that area and what what the city, wants it to, how it wants it to function, what it wants it to look like. And, in the meantime, we have projects coming up, and so how do we not preclude the developments of the committee by, reviewing projects currently in that zone.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I still think there's tools for you in your zoning code that allow you to think about how private development on Route 52 on Fishkill, there's multiple zoning districts along this route, right? But there's your landscaping guidelines, your lighting guidelines, there's guidelines in the zoning code already about traffic circulation and pedestrian safety. So there's things in there that I think will definitely be, or potentially be strengthened through the committee, but I think there's still tools in there for the planning board to be using when reviewing those. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Yeah, no, I think that's right on target. And I think, once the committee is done with its work and it makes its recommendations back to the city council, and certain recommendations then become incorporated into your zoning code, that's when you'll really have, the sort of the ammunition behind your recommendations. But you do have a lot of flexibility right now with the provisions that you have in your code.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think sort of looking at, the interim now between new zoning code, one wonders, what are the opportunities for something to be built outside of what, for example, a committee might come up with over the next couple of months and make recommendations on, right? So we've had these situations in the past where you've got development waiting to happen in an area that we're looking to rezone, and the two are competing, right? And it, right now, we've had one significant recent, development come before us on 52, And you're right, I thought we had a lot of really good mechanisms for helping to shape what already was a very good application.
Yeah.
And at least the two currently are mostly, to my thinking, cosmetic
Or like short term, yeah.
and short term,
Yeah.
right? So, yeah, I mean, the hope is that we can get to a point where we have recommendations and new zoning
Yeah.
before something happens based on old zoning that we didn't necessarily, anticipate or want.
Yeah.
right?
Right. So at what point would it be, I don't know, wise or consider like putting a pause on, looking at development in that area while the committee is doing its work and, the rezoning, it's not a quick, process. So what triggers, what would trigger that consideration?
That's a difficult thing because you're talking about a moratorium against further development, and there's always, there's trade-offs. You don't want to stymie the productive use of the properties within the city, or, preclude folks from making improvements to their properties, but yeah, you don't want to kind of cut your nose off to spite your face and have projects move forward that might be inconsistent with what the ultimate zoning laws are going to be. So it's a policy determination ultimately for the city council to make as far as when that would be appropriate. But it would be in the form of a local law adopting a moratorium against development.
Yeah, and it's hard because there's always tweaks and changes, like parking regulations, right? We're also, the council, planning board have been weighing in on revisions to parking regulations for the last few months. And, there's always kind of tweaks and changes that are going to impact development across the city in different areas. So I think exactly to Jen's point is there's pros and cons and trade-offs that get considered by the legislative body and the administration.
Yeah. Just got to see how it all plays out, right?
I could have taken that off.
Well, thank you. That was very helpful. Any other questions of Natalie? We actually have a full house tonight. This is awesome. It's good to be all together again. Well, I guess we can get started early. Unless there's any regulations against us starting early. So with that, we will move into our regular meeting. Welcome everybody to the, what month is this? May 2024 City of Beacon Planning Board meeting. First item of business will be to, unless there are any adds or other modifications to last month's meeting notes, I'll accept a motion to adopt last month's meeting notes into the record.
Motion.
Motion by Len,
Second?
second by Kevin. Was that Kevin?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. So that'll bring us to the first item on our regular meeting agenda, and that is public hearing and continued review of an application for site plan approval and special use permit for car dealership Carvana at 410 Fishkill Avenue. Good evening.
Good evening.
Before we go to the applicant, I'll accept a motion to open the public hearing.
Motion.
Motion by Karen,
Seconded by Len.
second by Len. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board. For the record, Taylor Palmer with the law firm of Cuddy and Fader on behalf of the applicant. Tonight I am joined by Dan Kohler, our project architect from Hudson Land Design, Jennifer Roldan from Carvana, and we're also joined by Rich D'Andrea of Colliers Engineering, our traffic consultant. As the chairman mentioned, as Dan's pulling up the site plan on our screen, tonight we are before you for our public hearing in connection with Carvana's applications for site plan and special permit approval to occupy the former Healy Hyundai location at 410 Fishkill Avenue. For the benefit of the public in attendance this evening, by way of brief background, and I think some of that might have been in our earlier presentation tonight about the location where we are on Fishkill Avenue. We're a 1.3-acre site. We're on the east side of Fishkill Avenue, which is right across the street from the recently approved mixed-use development at 397 Fishkill Avenue over in Conklin. The property is presently classified in the city's GB, or General Business Zoning District, and it's been improved by a car dealership that was previously approved by the Planning Board for Healy Hyundai back in 1995, so it was used for a mechanic and automobile use at the site. The property is, of course, in proximity to other automobile-related uses and nearby commercial uses, and it abuts the Metro-North's property, which is a rail line that Metro-North is in the process of abandoning down a pretty steep embankment. Unlike the former, more traditional car dealership that was on the site, Carvana is actually, for those that are not familiar in the public, Carvana is a location where it's really an online automobile car dealer that offers pre-owned vehicles for sale. Carvana's website allows purchasers to finalize their vehicle purchase online, where they can then select to pick up their cars at the location or accept delivery to the customer. So while some of the model involves direct to consumer, this would be an option for a pickup. So if a customer does elect to choose to pick up their vehicle, an on-site pickup would be scheduled at this location, at which time the process would take about 15 minutes or less during their regular business hours to pick up those pre-ordered vehicles. Typically, Carvana expects between 10 and 20 total vehicles on premises daily. Importantly, unlike the former Hyundai dealership before it, Carvana will not be doing any retail repairs at the site. And they're only proposing to utilize the existing bays that are at the facility for detailing and readying those cars that were purchased online for inspection, and also for New York State inspections for those same vehicles. Carvana's expected, or projected, employee count will be about 1/3 of the prior Hyundai dealership, with about 12 to 15 total employees at the location. We did provide a supplemental response to the board dated April 30th, and in that submission we did include some updates to reflect comments from the board's consultants and, of course, from the board as we move forward. Just for some of those highlights, we did include a more clearly defined drive aisle. Of course, we brought in Colliers to work up a real circulation and related analysis. Parking spaces have been adjusted, especially in relation to Carvana's single-car haulers, and a drive lane that provides access to the exit-only area. Dan will sort of walk through some more of these specifics, but areas on the site plan have also been designated for employee-only operations. And we also did include some wayfinding signage and some additional landscaping components, more to sort of come on that. Procedurally, for the benefit of the public, this is a Type 2 action under seeker, so there is no environmental review associated with same. The matter was, we understand, referred to the county per Journal Municipal Law 239, and the applicant is ultimately going to be seeking a parking variance, which we've submitted to the Zoning Board of Appeals. Again, under that's because the existing zoning regulations necessitate that. Our parking analysis and again, the city's revised zoning would not show that we have sufficient parking, again, that's significantly reduced operation on this site. But we'll be seeking that from the Zoning Board of Appeals. So with that, I will turn first to Dan to kind of walk through the site plan, then I'll ask Rich to hit on the study that was submitted to you all for the public.
Thank you, Taylor. I don't really have a whole lot to explain out of what Taylor already said, but I can just talk to how the operations will be in terms of Fishkill Avenue. So generally, the building is quite large. It's on the parcel already. And there's a number of previously approved parking spaces and loading zones and things like that probably had changed over the years a little bit, but so we're trying to bring some of that back, but also provide what's going to work for Carvana best at this site now. So we are going back to a loading zone that's designated on the south side of the site. The entire south side of this site is also generally going to be used for folks that are coming in to make purchases with Carvana and for some employee parking. Generally on the north side of the site, it will be Carvana employee operations moving throughout that part of the site. Carvana will be doing detailing and New York State inspections, and that's really the limit of the work that's going to be done in any of these garage bays that are here. But they will be set up such that as the person picks up their car, they're going to be able to have this experience and drive right on out through probably around the central of the part of the building, I would say, onto Fishkill Avenue and be on their way. There are some encroachments, as we know, and we're working to deal with that. In the current state, there is an opportunity for some, there's a paved area in the back here, so that would mainly be just employees only as well. It's not intended for anybody from the public to be using, so. Anything else I need to cover? I think water, sewer, pretty much going to continue as existing. And we showed some additional planters along the road and some curb stops to try to help define the area, as it's kind of a free-for-all now. So we've got more centralized locations now for entry into and out of the site.
Mm-hmm. You have a question?
Yeah, could you speak to the northern entrance and exit? It seems like there's not enough room between the light pole or utility pole, the parking to get in and out of that?
Yeah, we measured that. I mean, this is, if I can, there's kind of a 24-foot dimension that is floating around in here. I think that was intended to be moved up in through here, now that I'm looking at the plan. But I believe we have the 24-foot there, but we can check that.
Is there a light pole in the middle of the driving lane?
Are you talking about this right here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's generally at the end of one of it's existing as well. So we're trying to use the existing as we can, as much as we can. But
Yeah, I mean, like, there's cars.
Yeah,
parked here.
that's a very, Karen's raised a very good question. I just
I
noticed
don't see
it.
how that works.
How
I
are
don't
you
see how that
navigating-
We'll have to take a look at that because, we'll be able to provide a dimension from the pole to the nearest spot, let's say. And we're just trying to get as many spots as we could on here, based on what we had out there. But
Yeah.
it's a little awkward, some of the site.
What's the space between the parking that is facing 52 head-on and the pole? Like, the end of the lane looks like it's 5 feet, 10 feet from the utility pole.
Yeah, that almost looks impossible to
It's
navigate.
impossible.
Yeah,
Yes.
If you
we'll
have-
have to take a look at that
Yeah,
one, yeah.
okay.
Yeah, and that might change some of the parking layout, but we'll take a look at that. Thank you for pointing that out.
Great, okay, so at this point, we can go to, you're not done yet, okay. I didn't know you had a lineup. Yeah, go ahead.
Be as quick as I can.
Are you number 3 in the lineup or number 4?
I think I'm last.
Are you the last in the lineup? Okay.
Yeah, Rich D'Andrea, Colliers Engineering and Design. So we prepared a parking access circulation assessment for the project. And just to kind of touch on a couple things that Dan was talking about. I mean, I'm not sure if Dan mentioned it clearly enough, but the one thing that we are doing that I wanted to point out is in the middle of the site, there's currently an entry and exit kind of loop that's there today. So we're removing the entry portion of that loop. So kind of reducing one of the curb cuts per se, even though really it's kind of just an open pavement area across that entire frontage. So really you're going from 4 kind of access points to 3 at the end of the day when we make the modifications here. And the curb stops along there will kind of get rid of that entirely, that entry portion of it. I think Dan mentioned there's some signage that'll go in for employees and for the northerly access to kind of designate that as employees only, the southerly access for employees and/or customers. The other thing on circulation that we did take a look at was the loading zone that's along the frontage there. We looked at how a loading or a car carrier vehicle would get into that space. There's some turning tracks that if we want to look at them, we can. Dan has them available. But basically, we're looking at getting the car carrier either from the north or from the south into that loading position or that loading space in a front-in manner. So that if they're pulling in from the south, they're basically kind of just swinging in from the south right into that, or from the north, they're going to swing in, kind of making a left turn into it. But basically, the turning tracks show, and it's probably a little hard to see on the screen there, but the vehicle can get into that space, front in, fully in, out of the Fishkill Avenue right-of-way. When they're done unloading, they can back up a little bit and continue back out on their way. The idea there being that there shouldn't be any need for additional turning maneuvering within Fishkill Avenue, disrupting the traffic along Fishkill Avenue. I know there was a comment about trying to maybe flip that so the loading zone is more inboard and the planters get moved out towards the Fishkill Avenue street line. I don't know that would work particularly. It would be really difficult to get that car carrier into the site the way it lays out. If we did that, we could take a further look at it if you want us to, but I just don't see that would be a feasible option. So I'll leave it up to the board on how we could proceed with that one. On the parking end of things, we looked at the parking for the facility based on both the current code, obviously what we're dealing with right now, and the potential proposed local law revisions as well. When you look at the current code, Carvana estimates up to 15 employees at this site. Based on the code, we need one space per employee, another space per 150 square feet of gross floor area of the building. So we're looking at, all told, because we're like just under 20,000 square feet of floor area, 146 parking spaces on the proposed, or under the current zoning. We're providing 63 on site, so we have a shortfall of 83 spaces. As Taylor's mentioned, we'd be looking for a variance for those. When you look at the proposed local law for the changes to the city's parking requirements, that provides for a minimum of 59 parking spaces up to a maximum of 98. So we're within that range, at the lower end of the range, but we would be code compliant theoretically in that range. The one thing that we did look at also, just to give you a comparison point, for ITE, Institute of Transportation Engineers parking data, they provide data for automobile sales, used car sales, which is what we're looking at here. They also have a parking demand of between 60 and 98 spaces, so right in the same range as what the proposed local law would be. At the end of the day, the Carvana operation is significantly different than what was there before. It's a lot less, in my opinion, than what was there before. The fact that you have pre-orders and they're scheduled orders and pickups, certainly they can control a lot of what's going on the site. So at the end of the day, your 15 employees, they have 7 spaces designated for their car haulers that get used for the deliveries off-site directly to the customer, and another 7 spaces for customer parking for those coming to the site. That gives you 29 spaces that generally are going to be used on a regular basis, with another 34 spaces remaining on the site for storage of vehicles as they're being readied for delivery. So, when we look at that, we really see that the 63 spaces is enough to support what they need for their operations. I think that's all I had.
Maybe you could offer parking to some of the other applications in the city. I'm just curious, did your report pick up that little light pole anomaly?
That one I did not see, no.
Just a little
Yeah.
thing. So,
You know what I can say about that is that there were going to be multiple comments on the lighting levels that are there, and some of those are really driven by that, trying to use that light pole. So there's a possibility maybe we can actually just get rid of it completely.
okay.
I've
Take a look
heard
at
from
that.
your neighbors that they would probably be happy with that.
After having to
so-
drive to.
So as I understand it, your parking requirement under the current code is 163. You're seeking a variance for 63.
83.
For
Well,
83.
we provide 63.
You're going to provide
83.
63.
Right.
Under the new code, the 63 would fall within
The minimum,
allowable.
maximum.
The minimum, maximum, right,
Yeah.
okay. So just as long as I have that clear, then, we'll go to, let's go to the city engineer and planner first. Any sort of highlights based on your reviews, and then we'll take any further questions or comments from the board, and then we'll go to the public. So we'll start with you, Natalie.
Yeah, just a few comments on this revised one. So I think the first comment was regarding the parking requirement. So based on, I think that the most important number is what they anticipate to be their need for parking, which appears to be even less than the 63 that they're providing on site, right? So I think that, both with consideration of the potentially revised regulations and IT standards, I think from a planning perspective, you would not want someone to provide more parking on their site than they need to provide or that they will need to use. So from a planning perspective, that area variance for parking is very much supportable. My second comment is about the frontage and the landscaping. And I mean, I think I do want to acknowledge that there are significant improvements to this site based on over existing conditions, right? Right now, the frontage of this is 500 feet of zero curb cut. And what we've seen in this revision of the application is the addition of things like curb stops on the northern portion of the site, so a car can't just drive off straight into Fishkill as they can now, deciding wherever they want the driveway to be. There has been improvements in terms of, the striping alone, I think would be an improvement to show where the drive lanes are here. And then the landscaping planters as in terms of temporary improvements. I think my one recommendation with that, as was noted before, was just having the conversation. It does seem like it would be difficult, but having the conversation about whether those planters could be more street facing rather than kind of hidden behind the loading zone. I get why they're there. It's kind of a dividing line, and it does add at least some greenery to the space. I think, if there was a sidewalk along this portion of Fishkill, along this side of the road, I think that would be even more necessary, right? To not have this this vehicle turning movement or pulling off and in right over that. But from what I understand, this is also an improvement from maybe what is happening currently sometimes is just loading happening, kind of taking over the lane of
Free-for-all.
Of Fishkill Avenue and impeding traffic. So at least, the intent of that, and hopefully if it is used, that actually does alleviate some of the traffic issues along Fishkill Avenue. So that was just, I think my conversation on that was, I do want to acknowledge that there are improvements over the existing conditions of the site in terms of that frontage, but my question was, is there anything else that could be done that is feasible? There's a long strip of this in front of the building that, again, is full curb cut the whole way. Can there be more planters there to add more greenery? And then again, kind of the flipping, which I think we heard from the applicant, that might not be feasible, but that was my comment on that point. And then finally, I understand there have been revisions to the lighting plan over what it was that we reviewed previously. The most recent one that was submitted, which I think is not the most recent one that they are working on, actually the lighting levels got even worse. There was more hot spots on the lighting plan and higher levels of lighting than before. So a lot of my comments from the previous from my previous letter stood, but it sounds like some of those are trying to be addressed, and it looked like I was briefly able to look at, and maybe we can walk through the lighting plan a little bit more. It looked like you were trying to reduce those levels, the average lighting over the site, and kind of follow the recommendations. Again, there is a section in the code, 223.14b, that gives specific parameters about lighting temperature, lighting levels, that will need to be followed on the site.
Great, thanks. Do you want to talk a little bit about the lighting? Sure. For now?
Come on up, Mr. Kohler.
And yeah, specifically, obviously, you're aware of the
No, we're
planner's
just being mindful of the
observations.
comments from the public that was mentioned
Yeah.
earlier this evening. We understand about the lighting. We are addressing that. We also, neighbors may have noticed, the owner did go out to the site and clear blown debris that was in the railway. Wasn't
Yeah.
on our property, but on the adjoining properties, so we did clear that out as well. So we're hearing those comments, and we're trying to work for it. That was
Yeah.
Dan,
No,
can
that's
talk
great.
specifically to the lighting.
I think just sort of, we're curious what a preview of some of the steps you're taking to address the lighting
Yeah,
issue.
so let me just give a little bit of background. There are Central Hudson-owned lights that are there now. Those are the ones that are up on the tall wooden poles now. So we've been trying to work with them. It's slow pace. So as we were getting closer to the submittal deadline, I had asked the folks at Carvana, I said, you have a lighting designer, this is what we need to do. Some of the information probably didn't translate well. They came up with a plan, we submitted it, I saw it, I I reached out to the consultants. I said, I think we need to still work on this. We're
Yeah,
still
okay.
going to work on this. And so that's still a work in progress, so.
So how do Central Hudson poles, I'm just curious,
Yeah,
end up
I'm
on
not exactly sure.
private
I think
property?
that the light fixtures themselves are rented from Central Hudson. So we are trying to get the information on what those lights are. They're generally floodlights, so,
That's so weird.
yeah.
The owner doesn't know how they got there?
The owner knows that they have a deal with Central Hudson on that, but I don't, there's a lot of information that we just can't seem to really figure out, to be honest.
Okay, so you're trying to
So-
untangle it, okay. Are they the most egregious just in terms of lighting levels? Is that the big problem?
I think that they're probably the old sodium bulbs or something,
Yeah, yeah.
the floodlight, type bulbs, so.
They'll
you
pay
know.
for themselves
So
to be
they,
replaced.
that's what, that's kind of what I was saying to the Carvana folks. I said, look, we can come up with something that's going to be much more energy efficient, meeting the colors and temperatures and
Yeah.
all that we want to be able to have out there. So I think that that's the path we're heading to now, as opposed to trying to deal with Central Hudson and whether or not they have replacement heads that can meet these requirements. And
So
will
what do you
they be
do?
able
You
to
just-
give us photometrics even?
You just
from
take the
those?
lamps out of the Central Hudson ones and turn
No,
them off?
I think they're up. I think they're up a little high anyway too, and so I think that we would want to, cut them down. So our proposal was to have, I think the latest one showed the 18-foot mounting height on the poles.
So, but they're still putting out too much light.
That is correct. But what we're trying to do is, I'm trying to work with them. I'm not
I
the
got it,
lighting
okay.
designer on it, so we're just trying to convey all those comments over, and we're going to be able to get it down. I mean, the good thing about the LED lights is that we can really have a good amount of control that we can have with them, and
Yeah.
we're going to be able to, have a good throw with them in certain cases, and if I can get rid of that light pole to the north and use the building-mounted lighting areas there and still cast enough light that we have safety in mind, then
Okay.
we're going to try to do that.
So still work to do.
Yeah,
Got it.
thank you.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate that. Mr. Russo.
So Natalie hit on several of the comments that I had. There's just some cleanup things with regards to ADA access and the access aisle and the width in accordance with state building code. And then Mr. Palmer also spoke about the encroachments onto Metro North and still seeking to get an agreement with them at this point in time.
Just for the benefit of the board, we have spoken with Metro North. They came out to the site. We have now been referred to the middle, sort of the guru that comes up with the sort of the next step. We have to submit a whole application and materials to them. It's a very lengthy process, so it could take upwards of a year to get either a license agreement and/or
You've reached the inner sanctum.
we've reached the inner sanctum. There's one person.
Oh, no, you got
Who
more
then
to
brings
go.
you to the board. No, they are, I mean, they're very responsive, but it is
That's good.
they have a lot of property, as we all know, throughout the state. So, this is also a line they're abandoning, right? So this is kind of not so much a priority in general, but we are working with them and they've been very responsive. So we are going to be submitting the materials they've requested, which is, actual site pictures of the real steepness of the slope. For example, they're probably going to want some kind of a fence between our property and Metro North versus what we have existing today, because they're worried about their liability versus what we're doing, which is just a site plan amendment for an existing facility. So
So just for my edification, the encroachment is that sort of sliver all the way along the east property line, right?
This solid line that
Yeah.
the cursor is running over is the edge of pavement.
Yeah, and then the line above it is the property line, right? So what's the potential cure? Is it a transference?
it's twofold. It may be, right now, there's the active litigation, you probably read it in the Highlands Current or other papers, where there's the folks from the Midwest that are here, part of a class action lawsuit to try and sort of resolve whatever history may be, takings for people's property along the rail line that's being abandoned. That's a separate issue entirely, but yes, we're either seeking there's the whole length of the rail line is sort of being actively litigated here in the city of Beacon, so and beyond. But we're seeking either to be the proud owners of what the reality of this site is, the top of the mountain,
You're looking for them to transfer it.
and if not, it'll be a license agreement. Correct.
I see.
It's up, but that goes past our contact now, and then
Got it.
the
That's your-
deciders.
That's your
choose.
aspiration,
Yes.
goal. Good to have goals.
Yes.
Okay.
And by the way, I may add, this site, as you know, the owners of the property also own the Ford dealership, former Ford dealership north of the site. So Metro North has asked us to incorporate that as part of this ask. So while it's not part of this application, it's the same thing, which we'll speak to later for the 45 Beekman application. Make sure you ask for it all. in
Kill two
one,
birds with one stone. Yeah.
Or
Makes sense.
the hammer comes, yep.
Thank you. So there are two, the way I hear it, there's two issues you still need to resolve: lighting and your encroachment. Right. Anything else you wanted to add, John?
No.
Yep. Any questions or comments to the applicant by the board?
I was curious if they knew how frequently the car delivery trucks would visit the site.
Jen Roldan with Carvana. The 9 car haulers who will be bringing in the inventory, we're expecting them to make probably 2 trips a day based on kind of projected sales for the area.
So potentially it'll be there because it'll deliver, has to be unloaded, and then there's a certain time sequence, right? There's a certain amount of time it takes to load and unload and position and all that.
Correct.
So there'll be maybe at some point you can give us an estimate of like what portion of the day there'll be a car there'll be a vehicle there, and what portion you'll be able to see the planters and that sort of thing.
Yeah, my assumption is that those planters will be visible during daytime hours, dawn till dusk. We may get a delivery in AM hours or PM hours for those haulers, so those planters will be visible most of the day.
No designated times for the deliveries?
Not at this point in time. I can work to try and get that, though.
I would strongly recommend it. I mean, just from the standpoint of like activity and busyness, especially, that's like right at the mouth of that street just to the west.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, does loading or unloading, does that require any use of any part of the public right-of-way?
No,
Does it obstruct it, restrict it at all?
It shouldn't. That's why we're utilizing that loading zone on our site. There's excess area in that loading zone for us to have room to unload those vehicles and then maneuver them into the parking spaces.
Good question. Are the cars being brought there only for delivery, or they're going to be held there and staged?
The cars that will be brought to the site are either being picked up by the customer that same day, or they're going to be delivered to an off-site customer that same day. So we're looking at like 24-hour turnarounds. There won't ever be cars that are sitting there for, more than 24 hours or so.
So I have a question. So with regards to deliveries, you said they won't be using the right-of-way. So you have a sign at one end, you have a very tight constraint at the other end, so you're going to be unloading these cars and they're going to have to swing out in the road to swing into the site?
No, we've spaced the planters about 10 feet apart so that they can maneuver between the planters. And then if you look at this loading area, there's open space on the south end of the loading zone so that they could unload and then drive into the site. Well, the loading zone is in the site, but drive into where the parking area spots are.
I have a question.
Go ahead. I know where you're going.
In order to get through a 10-foot wide opening, that'd have to be going straight on.
Yes. So we're expecting them to back up if they need to, but we've kept each side of the loading area open so that they can maneuver.
How wide is the loading area? Meaning not the long width, but the
width.
The short depth. Yeah, how deep is your average car?
Yeah, I would say 12 to 15 feet if you have a long one.
And on the north side of the loading zone, you have a light pole there and
We
you
do.
have a sign.
Yeah.
So we're expecting the majority of our haulers to be coming in from the south, pulling into that loading area and then pulling out and heading north.
Sure, understood. The motion of the truck itself, but a car backing up
Backing off of the right.
thingamajiggy
And
needs to continue to back up and turn to get straight on to come in.
Mm-hmm.
So its butt end is going to be in 52 at some point or another while it's doing all of that. I guarantee it.
There
Comes up backwards.
Yeah, that's right. The dimension in here, let me just try to pull it up.
So we did, for the purpose of this, well, it's not subject to seeker, we did retain Colliers to kind of try and work these logistics out. So Colliers can definitely look at that and
Yeah.
create some sort of vehicle turning diagram like they have, because I think that's probably the most efficient way to show sizes, widths, in and out.
May I suggest that you consider moving the planters to the area north of the southern entrance, right in front of the building, where they'd actually be more visible, and they wouldn't be impeding your car maneuvering?
We can certainly look at that, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that was, I think Natalie had mentioned something similar, just like, where else could we potentially put those, that they might
Could I
also get some
also
exposure?
ask, have you looked at ways to allow the loaded truck to come in from the north, drop off, and to leave to the north? Is there any way to get, so that it doesn't have to come through the
I'll have Rich speak to that.
more residential areas of the
Seeing
city?
I mean, in order to come from the north and leave to the north, they would have to make a complete 180 turn somewhere that I just don't see being something that can happen within the available room of the site. And I don't know that there's anywhere else that would be a reasonable place for it to do that outside the site either.
Could.
I mean,
Couldn't use the site to turn around?
I don't think there's,
what radius do you need to?
it's, for a car carrier of that size, it's gonna be pretty significant. I mean, I could show that to you in
Like
the
if you're
future
coming-
so you can see it, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be pretty significant.
Right, so if you're coming from the north and you go all the way to the southern end of your site and you come into the site at the southern end of the loading zone and use the alley between the parking to turn, is there enough turning radius there?
For that size vehicle, highly unlikely. But again, we can diagram these things so you
Yeah.
can see them.
I mean, I for one, and you could convince me, but at least what we were talking about before, the maneuvering the cars from the truck into the lot, it sounds like you're setting yourself up with some challenges with the planters. So I sort of think that Karen's suggestion is a good one.
What's the
But
length
I'm
of
not
the
convinced
vehicle?
yet that you've proven to at least me that you're not going to be encumbering things happening on 52 by moving these cars on and off the truck.
Yeah, again, I think, like Taylor said, we can certainly show you, car carrier is parked here, here's a vehicle unloading,
That's
here's
what
how
I'm
it
saying.
gets into the site.
Convince me.
Yeah,
Right,
Because
absolutely.
I'm
you
not
could-
convinced yet.
You could also, instead of the concrete wheel restrictors, you could put planters there. On
In, where we have the wheel stops to the
the wheel
north.
stops, yes.
We can look at that.
Did you have something?
I do have a question, but it's on a slightly separate topic, so are we good with the, looking at the plan, it looks like the customer experience access is on the north side of the building. Is that correct? Is that the main entrance? So are folks going to be walking around to the east and north of the building from where they are parking and crossing the customer experience exit to get to the entrance?
So the idea is that the customers would come in, when they're coming to pick up their vehicle, they would come in through the southerly driveway.
Yep.
The customer experience bay is kind of like in the middle where that exit-only driveway is.
Right.
On the plan.
Right.
And so they would come into the building, do whatever they need to do as far as paperwork or whatever.
Right.
They would pick up their car from their new car from there and exit from that exit-only driveway.
Okay, I'm just looking at the third sheet, and there's an arrow, detail bay and customer experience access that's pointing to what looks like an opening on the north side of the building. And I was thinking, okay, if they're going to park by where that ADA space is and then walk around the east side of the building to come in and enter through the north, then I just was going to ask if there needs to be some striping or just other things as they go across, if they're crossing that exit ramp, what kind of pedestrian amenities
Yeah,
do
I
you need?
think the idea is that they're going to come through the building.
Oh, okay, so then that's just probably
get to the-
weird labeling
Yeah, I think the customer experience,
is on the south side.
Exit.
Because right now, it looks like, it says customer experience access, and there's an arrow pointing to the north side of the building, and maybe I'm just misreading it. If I was seeing that On the south side by the ADA space, it would make sense. You'd park and enter. You wouldn't have to walk around the building.
I think what they're representing is that's the bay where the vehicle is going to enter the building for them to detail out and provide
Okay.
the experience inside.
Got it. Thanks.
I have one more question. There's a vehicle by the number 7 with some sort of device next to it. Do you know what that is? Is that like on a
You're
lift
talking
or
about this one
something?
right here?
Yeah.
That's actually
Single car
their
hauler.
block of the single car hauler, just to kind of show it graphically.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Block. It's a CAD term.
CAD block, I'm sorry. Getting too technical.
Because some vehicles are going to come in on single-car haulers in addition to the deliveries on the multi-car haulers.
So, yeah.
Oh, I
so
see.
that's
Now I
what-
understand. It's the trailer it's on.
Yeah.
It's like a
have
flatbed.
Have you seen them?
I got it. I just was like, I've never seen that, so.
Kevin now wants to borrow your block. You need for other families?
So I did pull up that dimension there, if you notice it, there's 27 feet or so of property between the last planter and the property line there. So,
Well, what's the distance between the property line and the light pole that's there?
there's no light pole up here.
On the south side.
On the south side, I'm looking at the plans. Oh, it says proposed pole-mounted light.
Yeah, and that existing planter, I think, is just a square of dirt.
No, I'm looking at the
On the
plans that
south
were,
side.
yeah.
Where my
Proposed
cursor is there?
Proposed pole-mounted light.
Yeah.
At the end of the loading zone, the southern end of the loading zone.
See lighting exhibit from RC Lurie
See,
and
they
Company.
did that. Yep, yep.
Okay, so you got some,
Provide some movements there.
you got some stuff to do. Okay.
It's 15 feet.
I think with that, we'll go to the public. Anyone else on the board, questions or notes for the applicant? Great. Anyone here from the public who would like to share their thoughts on this matter? Please step to the mic, share your name and address. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Michal Mart. I live on Mead Avenue, so across the street. And I just wanted to thank the board for thinking through how it's really going to work out. And I wanted to ask if you can leave the public hearing open until we get the answers to the questions that you asked today. And in terms of just my understanding, so they're dropping off cars during business hours, I think Taylor said, and then some people will pick up their cars and some people, the employees will just drive those cars to their houses, or will there be other, pickups of multiple cars together? That's the part that I wasn't sure about. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to address that?
Yeah, whether you want us to address them at the end, just sort of.
Yeah, let's
Yeah,
collect them.
collect.
Thanks, as long as you're taking notes.
Good evening, Pam Weatherby, Mead Avenue. My first concern was the car haulers. I lived on Mead Avenue for longer than Healy has been there, and the car haulers have been an issue, and they do go in the road, the past business. So that is a huge concern, especially as that area is getting busier and busier. I have seen one car hauler coming through my neighborhood, and it was a memory I never want to see again. Every turn was torturous, and that was without any kids around, so definitely they cannot go on Conklin Street at all. One other thing, looking at the roof runoff, I know I've walked the tracks a lot, and I just am not sure, and I haven't looked there lately, if there's any runoff that is really coming down during heavy storms in that area onto the railroad tracks. I know there are some areas that are really bad. I'm just not sure if it's in that span, if that can be considered, especially with the future rail trail. The lighting, just I know it was saying that it's going to be dawn to dusk. I'm just wondering if some of the lighting, once the business is closed, if it could be turned off. I understand for safety some would have to be on, but you know, the current practice, and even with a business that isn't open, there's a lot of light still, and a lot of pollution, light pollution in that area. Okay. And then kind of, you know, I had this idea before I came, and then I'm kind of listening to you today, and I'm like, and, you know, I should know this, but I do not. Is it possible for the property owners to kind of land bank some sidewalk, you know, after, you know, it doesn't make sense for them to do it now because of the Fishkill Avenue Concepts Committee discussions, but is it possible to have a caveat that you would be doing this at a future time? I don't know if the law would allow that thinking, whether it be sidewalks or sidewalks and curbing. You know, I know we're getting new curbing and sidewalks across the street, so it's kind of like, I feel like this area could use some in the future. I am glad they are limiting where they are entering and exit, because right now, you know, for many years, it's been a free-for-all. So I appreciate that. And, you know, maybe one day we will have permanent curbing in that area for that large area. But I appreciate all that you're doing. I appreciate the changes. And I am in support of Carvana. I mean, my truck is from Carvana, had it delivered, so I understand the concept. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Michael Braden, live in Beacon, property owner.
What's your address, please?
Which one? 1 East Main Street.
Pick one.
There, 1 East
Thank you.
Main Street, currently. There's quite a few issues, but in the beginning, you talked about a moratorium, and I think that's the extreme end on doing something like this. I mean, the property's there, and they need to be using it, but it seems to me you should consider an initial time frame of approval that allows this to happen while the committee is determining what might be the best use in the long run for this property in this area. It is a gateway into the city, and right now, I mean, in all intents and purposes, Carvana is a logistics center. It's a logistics center for automobiles. And so there's going to be a lot of traffic going in and out. You know, I've seen these facilities before, so it's that point. And I love that you brought up the curbing, because I don't think planters do it. One, they're a hazard. If a car veers off or has to avoid something, they're going to run into a planter. And I think curbing should be part of this development. If you're going to approve it, I think you should have very specific curbing, sidewalk. For that matter, I love the fact that you brought up the whole, you know, street concepts and how we advance this. Well, we have something going on right here. It's a very dangerous area. If you've ever cycled, walked, or driven that way on a daily basis, cars pull out, and you're not going to control what people do. You can designate specific areas, but if you don't have curbing, you're not going to control it. And with the curbing, you can have some landscape and definition, and that will help mitigate some of the lighting issues. And I think they could do a whole lot better if we're going to live with this as a car entity. They can do a whole lot more to mitigate those issues. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa Kraft, I agree with that. The Carvana's own rep tonight said it would be logistically impossible to turn delivery trucks around in their own parcel. How is this going to work with them turning around on our local side streets? We already experience it at times as a very, very busy Route 52 with cars, delivery trucks, and now lots of tourists. And when the road is backed up, it passes through our neighborhoods. We already get lots of trucks taking shortcuts and speeding through our neighborhoods to find a faster way to get there. Typically, GPS takes truckers into the wrong streets. Carvana's own branding is very lit up and colorfully bright lights, and I'd like to see that not 24/7. Healy dropped off cars at 6:30 in the morning and very late into the night. How long is this anticipated to be rented there? If Healy owns it and the city is hoping to redevelop the Route 52 corridor, will they have to work around this? Will this always be there? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Matthew Brady. I live on Liberty Street, so I'm on the other side of Fishkill Creek, which kind of the backside of Healy dealership. And in the winter, I get a lot of light pollution when the trees are bare, and in the summer, I don't get as much. But something else I heard from chatting with people, but something I've dealt with and used to try to get Healy to deal with, which never worked, was they used to just search for their cars by using the panic button. And this went on all day, every day. So if you were home, hanging out in your yard, had people over, you just heard this blaring horns, all hours. I'd call up and basically hear tough cookies. Panic buttons used to not exist. Is Carvana going to do this? Yeah, I mean, the other things, like the railway being littered and stuff. I mean, I walk on the tracks as I cross over there, the curbs, people pulling out wherever they want. I cut over to go to Memorial Park through there, back through there, through the little closed bridge there. And that was always, I mean, it feels a lot safer since Healy left. I was really happy when Healy left. I really didn't want to see another car dealership. What is it bringing to the Beacon community? I don't know. Yeah, but mainly, I mean, for me, it was the light pollution and the blaring panic buttons to search for cars all day was, and to be met with arrogance. I don't know if Carvana's going to do that. But I also agree with everybody else. But they deal with different issues being directly across from them. But thanks.
Thank you. Something I never thought of. Finding your car with a panic button. Usually I try to find mine with the lights. Is that something Carvana does? The panic button technique?
No, especially because I'm sure Healy had much more inventory on their site than we plan to have. So our cars will be visible. We'll know which ones we're pulling for customers and which ones are being delivered.
Yeah. And so, yeah, just keep in mind, you heard from a neighbor.
Yes.
Don't ever do that. Yeah. Anyone else?
All right, so thank you for the comments. I think some of them I'll try and address now, and others we can address certainly in our supplemental submission. But importantly, this is a permitted use on the site. We're seeking a site plan amendment. So the existing operations are all permitted. We're trying to better all those conditions. So I think that's an important piece here, and I know the comments, we're taking those all into consideration. We are working through the lighting. We're trying to landscape. We're trying to make everything function more efficiently. But more importantly, as Jennifer just highlighted, the operations of Carvana are entirely different than a Ford, a Hyundai, a Toyota, whoever, who have 50 Toyota Camrys. This is customer A ordered car specifically B. So you might have an Audi, a Hyundai, a Toyota, whatever, all on the same site, all with their operations specifically for someone picking those cars up. As it was mentioned, these cars are going to be on site for 24 hours. This is not a Taylor wants to go buy a car. I walk into Toyota and say, hey, I'm interested, show me what you got. This is, I bought a car already, I'm picking it up, getting it off the site. So I think the efficiencies will be there. Something was mentioned, there was a mention of vehicles going on to side streets or otherwise. Drivers can certainly be advised of those limitations. I think these are the things that can be instructed to better learn the area. But again, Carvana's operations are much more limited than what was previously of the Hyundai dealership. Let me see here. We'll give some more information specifically about the time frame, as far as when vehicle, I think there was a question the board already brought up about when vehicles are going to be delivered and whatnot. I think that was the first comment this evening, just to make sure that we know when the haulers are likely to be on site. But again, much more limited than what the prior car dealerships were. Yeah, and we mentioned the panic button and the lighting. So a lot of these are comments that the board already sort of brought up this evening, and we'll certainly look. I think there was a mention of the roof runoff as well. So we'll look at that. We have Mr. Kohler on for the engineering piece of that. But we'll certainly, for anything we've missed, we're going to respond to these in writing in addition to what I've provided tonight.
Great, thanks. And thanks, by the way, for cleaning up the owner's mess, the garbage.
The owners, yeah,
Looks
the
good.
owners were it wasn't, I wouldn't say that it was necessarily the owners, but they certainly cleaned up.
It was on their property.
Another owner's property that doesn't clean it up.
Oh, okay. The lessee cleaned up the
Right.
lessor's mess. Got it. Thank you. I think we're going to leave the public hearing open. Great.
Yes, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. With that, we'll move on to our next item on the agenda, and that is the continued review of an application for amended site plan, 11 Marabou Lane, submitted by Marabou of Beacon LLC. Good evening.
Good evening. Dan, you ready? Dan subbing for Mike tonight. But I will, I'll get started. Not necessarily in the correct order, but there was a few conditions that we had agreed to. We agreed to, this is the site plan. There really isn't anything changing on the site plan from our last discussions. I just wanted to show it up here. I'll go with Dutchess County Health. They have already approved our new sewer alignment, which is along Gatehouse Lane, and that is the semicircular path. They wanted to wait until after tonight, assuming a resolution is passed, and then the Mylar will be presented to them this week, and then they can sign the Mylar and the prints. So Dutchess County Health, and I think Mike sent a note to Mercedes. I'm not sure where it went about the status of Dutchess County Health. So that's in good shape. With the bonds, we've agreed to post the bond for all of the Grandview sewer work. There's cuts in the road for water and sewer and gas. The total of those 6 small projects is about $145,000. So we'll post the bond to the city administrator. A resolution was passed last December that he would accept the bond. Once that's done, then we can apply for the road cut permit with the highway department. And then after the bond is submitted, and then we could submit plans for signature to yourselves and to Dutchess County Health Department. So that's where we stand with the bonds. The second bond, which is substantial, is for the Route 9D work, and that will be spring of '25.
Got it.
Okay.
And that's all organized, and we're all set there, right? In the city.
So that we're okay with that.
Great. Okay.
Related to sewer is the realignment of the easement for the sewer, and Dutchess County Health is all set with that. Beatty and Watson has the plan, ready for filing once it's signed. Architecturally, there was a couple of questions, and Dan, if you could pull up the view shed. And this is of the mechanical equipment that's up on the roof. So this is only visible if you're sitting in the terrace, the dining terrace. So it's within the site, and you can see some blocks up on the roof in that low roof area. And that's where the mechanical equipment is, right there. It's not visible from the street, not visible from anywhere else unless you're dining just outside on the south side of the mansion. The other question was the material of the roof. So the large roof over that banquet room is copper. And our other renderings, Dan, if you could go to, I think it's A3.00. The next one. Well, you can see it here as well. So all of that green roofing is copper.
It's actual copper.
Actual
You're
copper.
gonna let it patina.
Yes.
Yep.
I think those were the 2 architectural questions. And I think timing-wise, the other question was, we've agreed to, come back to you 3 years after the opening to address the gravel condition of a part of Marabou Lane and then the western parking lots.
Yep. 3 years from now?
3 years from when we open.
Oh, from when you open.
Right.
Okay. Great, thanks. So we'll just go to our engineer and planner for any last comments, because we're considering adopting resolution tonight.
Yeah, I'll start because mine is brief. I did have previous comments, but they had all been addressed by the most recent submission. There was just some cleanup with notes. And just as a reminder for kind of the public and the boards, we talked a lot about the view sheds that had been previously reviewed for this and how those were not being impacted by these changes.
Thank you. John?
Mr. Kellogg spoke to just basically everything I had, addressing it. The only other thing is I'm asking for a note to be added to one of the sheets referencing the filed map that set up the 2 lots.
Yep.
Okay. Any questions of the applicant by the board? Before we consider first the amended SECRA resolution, and then we also can talk about acting on the amended site plan resolution. Did you have something?
Yeah, just how do we make this 3-year thing actually work?
Well, it becomes a part of the resolution that they have to come back. They don't, they're not in compliance. Or maybe I'm being too harsh.
There's a condition in the resolution. We can go over that, the mechanism. So the condition references the fact that 3 years after the issuance of a certificate of occupancy, either the building department or the planning board can determine whether the surface of that employee parking lot needs to be paved at that point. So if it's not working properly, you can make that determination, or the building department can make that determination. And then once that determination is made, the parking lot has to be resurfaced by the applicant. The applicant's required to secure all the permits that are necessary and complete the work within a commercially reasonable time frame after notification. So that's the process.
So Bruce is going to put a reminder in his calendar.
Well, yeah, that was kind of the question.
Yeah, what is the mechanism for, making sure that we don't sort of forget times
ultimately,
in
the building
future?
department is responsible for enforcement.
You're going to put it on your,
sorry, Bruce.
a big star in his calendar.
Maybe book a massage for 3 years out, and then you'll go check out the facility. I'll volunteer.
Obviously, once they get to that point, we'll have to, go out, take a look at it. If for some reason, there are maintenance issues with it or things like that, we could refer it back to the board, or, if the board wishes, we just go ahead and ask the applicant to pave everything that wasn't paved. So, but we can address that at that time.
Yeah, but we tried to build in flexibility into that condition, so it can be either the building department doing it administratively, or coming back to the board.
Yeah, and in all of our projects, the building department, they're going to be on site on a regular basis anyways. If we change a door or add a window, or there's going to be reasons, to come to the site.
Bruce is going to have a room there.
Projects are going to have potential 2064 reminders.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay.
Wow.
I'm sure you'll remember.
Exactly. I mean, I would imagine that if it was something that would generate a public complaint, then people would be reminded that this occurred, but it doesn't seem like it would be a nuisance, except for yourself.
It will start with guest complaints. So
Yes.
we'll hear very early on, when it starts to become, if it becomes a problem.
Okay. All right.
Also, I think, it'll be a site plan amendment, right? If we're going from gravel to a hard surface, so we'd have to come in front of the board anyways.
Yeah, I mean, this allows it to be an administrative amendment.
Okay.
But I'm sure the city engineer and the building inspector at the time will look at that and make that determination.
Right, and they've already accounted for the stormwater as if it was paved.
Exactly, so it's like it's been pre-reviewed.
Okay. Never done that before. Okay, so we have the SECRA, amended SECRA, I should say, neg deck to act on. Any discussion on that, board, or can I accept it? Yep, go ahead.
Can I ask one question? Somebody came to me and asked about, the recent tree removals that you've had. and just were surprised because of the amount of trees. There's a large grove that was right in the front that the driveway goes through. And that was always planned. You didn't
Right.
change your plans.
No.
I
And
was
that
like,
that was
perhaps-
all identified on
Understood.
on the
And
plans.
those were existing non-significant
Right.
trees?
Yep.
Okay. And I'm just curious if, when you went, did you go to the Parks Department, SHPO, or the?
SHPO, yeah.
And
Yeah, SHPO was the archaeological study, so we've
gotcha.
done a phase, the previous owner did a phase 1A and 1B, and then we did a 2A and 2B.
And were there comments from those other agencies about the historic character of the landscaping? And whether or not I just was curious whether they had input as to whether it was.
Yeah, so there was two
the direction.
SHPO actions. There's SHPO for archaeological, and that was all wrapped up. And then there was SHPO for the historic restoration. So and they got very much involved, not with just the building, but the landscaping as well.
That's what I
View
was curious
sheds.
about. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're done with SHPO for historic restoration, and now we're with the National Park Service.
That's what I was curious about.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if that had changed after our review.
No,
Okay.
no, that's been ongoing
Great.
for, I think it started probably 6 or 7 years ago.
Gotcha.
Ed, I think I recall you telling us that SHPO was more in favor of the removal of the 2 ponds and some of the changes that are in this current package than they were with the previous design, correct?
Right, the Monet, not the natural ponds, but the Monet garden ponds, right.
And that review by SHPO is referenced in the.
Right. No, I understood.
Yeah.
It just came up, somebody asked me, and I thought I'd ask.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay, so we can discuss, we can either discuss or I'll accept a motion to adopt the attachment to negative declaration, reason supporting determination, the secret document.
Motion to accept the attachment to neg deck.
Motion by Len,
Second?
second by Kevin, all in favor?
Aye.
And then that takes us to the amended site plan resolution. Any questions, comments, other notes? Otherwise, I'll accept a motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt?
Motion by Kevin,
Second.
second by Karen, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Take
It's
care.
been fun. You know, I know you can't meet together, but we have the mansion at the point where it's interesting to tour. So whenever anybody wants to come by, just let me know.
Would love to.
Okay.
Yeah,
Be
thank you.
careful with you.
What?
I'd look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll have a hard hat for you.
Yeah, do we have your contact info, right?
Yeah, Bruce and Mercedes, yeah. You know where to find
Yeah,
me.
Bruce knows where to find you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Okay, so that takes us to our next item on the agenda, which is, yep.
So I did bring the laptop with me. I don't know that we necessarily need to go through, because there really haven't been any changes.
Yeah.
A couple
So this is
technical things.
continued review of application for amended site plan approval, 248 Tioronda Avenue, submitted by Beacon 248 Holdings LLC. So, sorry, what were you were saying you don't have any,
No, I have it with me. I'm pulling it up now, but really there's not much to go over. We were actually, not to speak for the board, but I believe you guys would have been ready to act last month, but we weren't at the 30 days yet
Yeah.
after declaring for lead agency. So we did resubmit. There were some technical comments that we responded to, but they're very,
yeah, okay.
not much to go over.
So, Board, we have, very similar to the last application, we have a second amended secret neg deck draft to discuss and potentially act on, as well as a second amended site plan resolution to discuss and act on. But first, just as far as any other finer details that are still remaining, potentially, we'll talk with the planner and our engineer first. So we'll start with, well, let's switch to John first.
You have to recuse yourself, correct?
Oh, that's right.
I thought I was on the wrong project. Yeah.
I was wondering why I couldn't find your comments.
So the applicant did make submission to the Department of Health. They recently received a letter from the Department of Health with 4 minor comments that I guess you're in the process of addressing, Kyle?
Yes.
So there's no stoppers there. We still need the new easement agreements and descriptions for the rail trail. And that was it. All of the other previous engineering comments were addressed.
Great. Okay. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Board, any other questions of the applicant? Or observations, notes, comments before we consider the second amendment to the secret neg deck for action? Okay, so then we'll go to the second amended secret neg deck. Questions of Jennifer or discussion around the second amended secret, or otherwise I'll accept a motion to adopt.
Motion.
Motion by David, excuse me. Second?
Second.
Second by Randall. Everybody's changing up tonight. It's kind of throwing me off. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then the second amended site plan resolution discussion, or otherwise, I'll accept a motion to adopt.
Motion.
Motion by Karen.
Second.
Second by David. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. I know, now we're really rolling. So I'll then go to the next item on the agenda, that being, if my thing will work, oh, wrong button. The continued review of application for subdivision approval, residential, 39 Howland Avenue, submitted by John Vergara. And if you all remember, this is the flag lot. Is that applicant here with us?
Maybe they're coming back now.
Yes.
Is that Dan?
Yeah,
Yeah, it is
that'll be
Hudson Land
Dan.
Design.
Yep. And just real quick, we had talked last meeting about just the concept of this home moving more to the front of the lot.
Or at least getting out from behind it. It's now, you know, it used to be like right behind the other house.
Yeah.
Now it's kind of come up.
Yeah, I think the question was whether it would conform if it were brought to at least, you know, some proximity to the other homes along Howland.
It wasn't that. There's no way it's going to conform because we don't have enough lot width.
Well, that was the question, whether it would be in variance.
But yeah, if we relaxed width and or yard requirements, whether we could get to an alignment
Yeah.
closer to the street.
And I think there was some sort of study that Jennifer is going to do, so that's kind of why I brought it up, right?
It's a provision that David had mentioned at the last meeting, and sorry to kind of interrupt the
Yeah,
applicant's
so he wasn't
initial
ready, so we're just
presentation,
gonna
but-
jump in.
Yeah, so we just jumped in. Right, section 223-12J does allow the planning board to modify lot requirements, so things like lot width, provided the applicant submits a conservation subdivision application. So basically, a conservation subdivision would allow for the planning board to adjust those things in order to either preserve important features of a site or for like good planning principles.
Yeah.
So if the applicant is willing to submit that conservation subdivision type of application, that will give you the authority. If the applicant's not, then you would need to go to the city council to seek authorization to utilize that, basically to compel the applicant to utilize that particular method.
Yeah, okay.
So
Thank you.
that's
That's
what's spelled
extremely
out
helpful.
in the
That
code.
sort of clears up what the question was last month.
Yeah, so there is flexibility there.
There is some mechanism in place. So that obviously begs the question. Not sure, Dan, if you or the applicant have had a discussion about this since last meeting. And for quote-unquote good planning purposes, basically the position of the board that the applicant potentially look at this. And it looks like you have something there. So you have thought about it.
What we did was we showed the 75 foot. So the red line that's horizontal here would represent if we were to maintain the minimum 75 foot,
Right.
which Jennifer is saying is that might be able to be modified by conservation by the board, but you'll see that that line comes right up to where the parking is for this house as well. So it's going to create probably an issue for this house if we were to try to take any more land away to create something that could be usable here. I mean, in the R15 district, we have the 50-foot lot width. So a lot of times when we have those, you've got a 5 foot from the driveway to the property line.
Yep.
Driveway, the house ends up being, 22 feet wide. So,
So two questions. What would the resultant setback be to the existing house with that new red lot line? And then with that new red lot line, what's the lot width of the second parcel to the north?
I can see if I can, this is set up to,
Do you really trust measurements in Adobe?
yeah.
Do it all the time.
Do you? I know, some of my people do it too, and I'm just like, I don't trust that.
It depends. If you print it to scale, it should always come up right. Sometimes you end up having in inches, and then you have to figure out what the scale is and convert it over.
No, maybe I'm old-fashioned.
The way that it would really make sense to do it would be to have a shared driveway.
Which I don't think they like that as far as utilities and other things. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, the code does allow you to have a common driveway, a shared driveway,
Yeah, again,
but it
look,
requires that driveway to be 16 feet wide to the point of where it branches off
so
to
you can have
each.
two people pass. Yep, in and out,
Correct.
or drag racing.
It's too short.
So, yeah, I guess where we're going is like, this idea and the feasibility of it, right?
What I had in mind to take a look at is not what's up on that screen. I
Yeah.
mean, it was pretty clear from the outset there wasn't enough width to put two houses side by side. Based on what Jennifer just said, I don't know, I think you basically agree with this assessment. I think we're in a position to tell the applicant that they should be looking at alternative arrangements, as well as to say that with the applicant's consent, we could potentially be moving some stuff around here. I don't really know that we can, at least based on what I'm seeing in front of me,
Yep.
impose it.
Yeah, well, so that's what I was getting at, in terms of, right, those questions that I just asked Dan. It goes to feasibility,
Yeah.
right? So it is kind of looking like it's not feasible, right?
Well, I will just point out that one thing, so doing an analysis of surrounding properties, right? There is a 50-foot width lot on one side of this property, and then a 65-foot width lot on the other side of this property, both of which have homes on them.
Right.
And so if you were to divide this lot into, this frontage into two, you essentially get 50 feet and 64, a little short of 65.
Well-
So I do see that, I think there are the thinking about driveways, shared access and aspects like that, but in terms of whether or not that lot width, or there is width for two lots, that would be with the community character of immediately adjacent parcels. I think that is kind of shown in the neighborhood as
Yes,
present.
but that's not taking into account the fact that the existing house is there.
Yeah, exactly, but we just I hadn't seen that kind of sketched out. I think we saw the 75-foot
Yeah.
where that line goes.
Yeah. So Nick, we're kind of working on this in real time here.
Yeah.
So what is the resultant width of that second lot?
This one right here,
Yeah.
if we have 75 here, it's 34.7.
Yeah, it's, yeah.
And if you drew that line at 65 feet, where does it fall then?
In the middle of the house.
In the middle of the house?
Or slices off part of it.
The driveway.
The driveway.
No, it's gonna hit the house.
Meaning this line would come down 10 foot, you're saying?
Yeah, because you're going to wind up adding another 30 feet.
Right.
Add another 30 feet.
Yeah.
Now, what if that line came down the 10 feet, 65, 70 feet back from the street? Because that is kind of what I had in mind in terms of arrangements where ultimately, looking from the street, you're not seeing a house that's 125 feet back. You're seeing a house that's like 75 feet back.
And mind you, not just back, but below.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, it's a good 10-foot elevation.
That's a significant kind of visual discontinuity that just, it looks like a house plonked in somebody's backyard, partly because of that quality of how, how different it is in terms of elevation from the street and the other houses around it. Yeah.
Yeah, I still think it's going to be pretty low regardless, because that's about this is 90 feet dimension right here. So at the 65 mark, maybe, because this
Yeah, it's a difference of like 2 or 3
right
feet.
here, you're still 7 feet below the road elevation right there.
Yeah, that's
You can see the elevation drop is
It's
significant.
next to
Yeah,
the
it
curb.
drops.
And it's, well, yeah, right, it's not an insignificant visual discontinuity.
As soon as you get behind the other house at all, it's already pretty far down.
Yep.
But then some of that visual, I think that was the concept of putting some of the screening, vegetative screening right down here.
Well, that was actually to provide a buffer to the neighbors, so they're, not looking into the neighbors' rear of the homes and.
Right, well, you'll still, from the street, you'll still know there's a home there. No matter, unless that buffer grows to 40 feet. Right? Yeah, it's just uncomfortable. Right, I know it works, I know it fits, just odd. That's all I can kind of characterize it as.
And this is a family situation too, right, where they're trying to create something for a relative, so, right?
That I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
I told you that
You
last
know,
time, that's possible.
You
At
gotta remember, even if it is, this
doesn't
is,
matter.
That won't last
the
forever.
property
Yep.
subdivision doesn't go away in 10 years.
I know.
Yeah.
No matter who sells it, buys it, transfers it, whatever, it doesn't matter. Yep. Well,
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that there's going to be anything that's not going to be awkward in your opinion then, regardless. I mean, if we have a house here, I don't know.
Not every lot is subdividable.
not every lot should be subdividable.
At least with this, we can provide some screening and separation between the houses. The depth of the lot is really what makes the most sense for putting it in the back, but I understand what you're asking for.
Okay, so let's talk to our planner and engineer. So let's start with John.
So the applicant did have an I&I study done. There was nothing found with regards to that. We have some minor comments with regards to the subdivision plat, and then we're recommending some changes to the utilities on the site, relocating the pump station to the side of the house so that people are not looking at a vent stack, not parking vehicles on it. I don't believe that structure is H20 rated, so I have concerns with vehicles parking on that. The pump station will require visible and audible alarms. I'd like to know where they're going to be mounted on the house. And then I just need some additional information as far as the utilities within Howland Avenue itself.
Okay, thanks, John. Natalie?
Yeah, I mean, I think we really touched on my main comment.
Yep.
I think, in many ways, this is compliant with the regulations.
Yep.
I think it's just that siting and placement of it. The code does have language about the property facing the front property line, which it is. It's just not necessarily visible from the front property line. So I think that's why we were trying to talk about opportunities to make this a little bit more in line with residential homes on this street, which do tend to be closer to the sidewalk. I think from the other side, housing is definitely in need, single-family homes in need, so there is that other side of it that I just want to provide that balanced perspective. And in terms of, looking in cities to infill and densify, but I do agree that there is merit to not every lot is easily subdividable or in a logical kind of way.
Hey, Dan, question for you. You see how thank you, Natalie. You see how the houses facing Howland actually sort of are oriented with their faces sort of
This right here.
parallel to Howland? Can you squeak this so it's also doing the same thing?
This one?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might just be at least a subtle nod and recognition of its context. Great. Board, anything else? Questions? I think we can talk about scheduling public hearing for next month. So.
Have any of the neighbors expressed concern or comments?
We can find out
Yeah,
next month.
I was going to say, we can find out next month.
That's, I think,
So I'll accept the motion to notice public hearing for next month's planning board meeting.
Motion.
Motion by David,
Seconded.
second by Len, all in favor?
Aye. And then you'll also want to direct secret documents that we can look at before we
Drafts.
open the public hearing.
Yeah, so
Subdivision.
we'll also do that. We'll direct Jennifer's office to generate draft secret documents for review and action. And it's a little early for you to draft resolution,
On subdivisions, we do it before the public hearing.
the draft resolution.
No, not the
secret.
resolution, the secret.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
we're gonna, I just asked for a motion for that.
Yeah.
But then
Not
I-
resolution, though, no.
To draft it. Oh, but not the,
To
yeah, yeah,
draft
okay,
the
I'm
secret
sorry.
documents,
It's been
yeah,
a
the
long
next-
day.
Yeah,
Not draft resolution, draft secret.
two separate things.
Motion. Motion by Karen, thank you.
Second?
Second by, who was that? Kevin, all in favor?
Just for my own clarification, is that the secret public hearing and the subdivision public hearing? Or
No,
is it
we don't
it's
do-
separate still, right? Is
No,
that-
so we don't do secret public hearings on every subdivision application, only for those applications where the board wants input from the public before they act on secret.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this one, we're
So-
not doing secret public
Yeah.
hearing.
That's usually reserved for larger applications.
So we got public hearing notice for next month and draft secret documents from Jen's office.
Okay. And is there anything that we can, do you need more exhibits from us to try to come up with alternatives, or how do you want us to address the earlier conversation?
Well, look, you've heard some real concerns by the board.
Yeah.
About, like, this theory of not every lot should be subdivided. Obviously, the owner has a right to subdivide. I don't know, if you want to have a conversation with them about potential alternatives to this, feel free. And at the very least, if it does respond to its context a little bit more by whatever means, including just a kind of a slight turn to orient it. I mean, I know that's just the pad, right? And we're not talking about the house itself right now. But, and they may sell and some other, developer may come and would have the same conversation about how to orient the house on the lot. But you making that sort of change would sort of start that conversation. At least we could go to that new owner and say, well, Dan thought it was a good idea. So, but unless anyone else on the board has anything for Dan, I don't.
Just what, kind of what I said before, I think there's a sentiment that it would be better to have the house closer to the street, and I think our takeaway at this point is that we don't really have the ability to compel the applicant to do it.
Unless they go to the city council.
Well, right, but you gotta make a finding about unique characteristics, and that's part of what I'm saying. Based on the record I'm seeing, I'm not seeing grounds to do it, period. So, yeah.
Well, I think if we can try to figure out a way to soften it, whether that is a orientation change, maybe even some additional landscaping up front, maybe along here.
As with everything we always do, make it the best it can possibly be.
Best.
Right? That should be the charge.
Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you. Great. So we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, that being the continued review of an application for site plan and subdivision approval, mixed-use commercial and residential, 45 Beekman Street, High Street, submitted by Beekman Arts Center LLC and Bay Ridge
I have to
Studios.
recuse myself.
Good evening.
So I'll be out in the hall.
Thank you. We'll see you back after this one. Maybe, maybe not. You have no choice. Get back here. We should make these recusals opportunities to run for coffee.
Yeah, well, Bank Square's closed at 7 now, which is killing me.
All right. Good evening.
Good evening. Long time no see.
Yeah.
For the record, Taylor Palmer with Cuddy and Fader on behalf of the applicant. Tonight I am joined by Aria Siegel, our architect, and Justin Dates of Colliers. I'm still always going to say Mazer, so Mazer Colliers. As the chairman stated, we are before you this evening for a continued review for a site plan and subdivision application proposing to redevelop the premises for two four-story mixed-use commercial multifamily buildings at 45 Beekman Street, as the chairman mentioned, High Street. They are vacant parcels, so we don't have street numbers for those yet. We did last appear before you on Valentine's Day to provide our comprehensive presentation, which was expanding on the sketch plan that we had originally presented to you all in December. Since then, pursuant to the recommendation of this board at its December meeting, and then we started to investigate the sort of chain of title and history of the site on North Avenue, trying to figure out who owned the right-of-ways along 9D and Beekman. Dutchess County Planning Department ultimately in their referral comments acknowledged that certain alternative designs could benefit from utilizing these right-of-ways if feasible, following certain investigations. And of course, city planner mentioned the intent of this district to try and bring buildings up to the frontage. So with those directives, we were in contact with city staff and the DOT. We finally did receive confirmation of who that rightful owner is, and it's all DOT. City does not have any of the right-of-way on Beekman either. We envision that, and of course, to the city administrator's chagrin, hopefully someday he won't have to mow it anymore. Well, not him in particular, but the city won't be on that task anymore.
The suspense was killing me.
Yes.
Who owned this?
There's a lot of history that goes into that chain of title. So much so that we did make additional outreach. Richard DeAndrea of Colliers is on this project as well. He's not here tonight because we're sort of just giving you all an update of where we are, but we did reach out to DOT to say, hey, we now know who the proud owner is of these sections of right-of-way. We're going to be submitting you all an application, which I would call sort of the surplus right-of-way. And they said, make sure this is reiterative of the MTA discussion, make sure what you ask for is right, because this is another process that will take about a year of involved application and submissions and determining price and going through the process of determining its surplus and then becoming the proud owner of the right-of-way. But the applicant is taking a big jump and has its consultants preparing these site plans, site engineering the site, because we got great feedback about this being surplus land, but they said make sure you know the shape and the detail of what you need for the site. So part of why we're before you tonight was to kind of present this to you and First, Justin will kind of walk you through. We've looked at the utilities. We've got the whole sort of layout of that. That was a comment that came from Mr. Russo throughout sort of our pre-submission meetings and meeting with the city administrator previously when we thought this was going to involve the city council potentially, as we thought the city was the owner of the Beekman Street right-of-way. So we did explore a lot of what's going on above and below the surfaces. So we are actively involved in that process. We're still confirming a little section. There's a weird sort of chain of title question regarding one of the High Street parcels. So our title company says we own it, but like anything else, it just can't be simple. So we have one piece that we're still affirming before we submit the official request to the DOT. What we've shown on our site plan, however, and which Justin and Aria walk through, is what we are going to be asking for. Whether we own some of it versus what DOT owns is what we're still sort of in the...
You should know better than anybody. Lawyers need something to do, so.
It's an interesting history, and names that you'll all know if you look in the title. There's a lot of...
Old Beacon names?
Old Beacon names.
Like, they start with V and Van and...
Yeah, you know.
Lick, and, yeah.
But in any event, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Justin to kind of walk you through the updates to the site plan and some of the utility stuff, and then Aria can most importantly show you, because we are articulating the buildings differently. You know, the home plate building has been reshaped. We've adjusted it and sort of laid it out in a more flat function. We've adjusted how the units are sort of dispersed throughout the building. We remain the same number of dwelling units, but they've been sort of adjusted in the building. Again, sort of when we have that flexibility on the site, it allows it to sort of be better represented. So we did increase the commercial space, but again, the residential components are there, but I don't want to steal too many of their talking points, as I always do. So with that, I'll turn to Justin to walk you through the site plan.
Good evening, Justin Dates, Colliers Engineering and Design. So a few things just to kind of run through it, kind of like a comparison, right, from our prior site plan package that we gave you. This one, as you can see, we kind of took the right-of-way that was in front of the former home plate building. That was kind of the right-of-way. We tried to carry that line up or east along Beekman Street. So what that does, it filled that little kind of hole where our property was north of Beekman. It's roughly, average about 40 feet in depth, and we picked up about 0.27 acres of property with that. So the overall parcel increased just over 2 acres. So within that, that additional area that we gathered, or encroachment that we could come closer to Beekman, we took and shifted the building again right up to that proposed right-of-way where we had struck that line, or that theoretical line where we want to have the right-of-way be. So that the Beekman Street building did get a little bit bigger. The former home plate building, we call it, shrunk in size, and really everything behind the building is also moved forward, right? So we were really able to create additional separation between the adjacent parcels on Tompkins and on High Street in the back of our parcel. Preliminary grading looks like we may need a smaller extent and lower wall, so we're thinking less grading will also benefit by this shift forward. As Taylor mentioned, the units stayed the same. The commercial space did go up, well under 2,000 square feet. Parking increased in correlation to that increase of commercial space. So, I'm sorry. So we had, our prior plan had 83 total spaces. This one has moved up to 91. And that was our traffic engineer, Rick D'Andrea. He did just a preliminary shared parking analysis for the new commercial space and the 64 units. And 91 was the number of spaces that we needed to hit. So we'll be providing an updated shared parking analysis, but our initial review is the need for 91 spaces, which we have provided on site. The number of spaces in the garage under the Beekman building went up to 41, and then we have the 50 surface spaces. Again, green space did go up some as well, 23% prior, about 35% on the current sketch plan. And then, And then it's also, there is the 40-foot setback for parking from the right-of-way or property line into the site that we were looking at. The January building had about 18 spaces that encroached into that 40-foot. This current plan, there's 4. So getting that additional lot area and moving everything, helped us comply better with that requirement. Now, utilities, so we have been out to the site. There was some videoing of the sewer line. We did an extensive amount of GPR reviewing existing conditions and utilities on there. We have a updated draft from the surveyor of all the information that we've gathered. There's still some pieces that need to be put together. That will be provided, in a future submission for the board to see. The sewer lateral that runs kind of north to south through the site, there are some services that tie into that. Some are live, some appear to be, abandoned. So, we are going to have to reroute it, of course, to work with the project, and we'll have to come up with a plan to kind of confirm if they are abandoned, because there are some that appear to be on the east side, like towards Beekman, going to former
Who knows
buildings.
where?
Yeah, exactly. So there's going to be some anomalies like that, getting into actual construction might need to be coordinated a little bit, but.
Well, let me ask you, Justin, so you're moving this building all the way up towards Beekman. I do like this plan a lot better with this building being shifted, but are there any utilities in that area that are going to create a conflict that you're not going to be able to bring the building this far forwards?
No, some of the prior drainage and sewer that was coming north-south up along 9 there, those are actually just outside of that right-of-way line on the east side, right? So the right-of-way line that we're not modifying, they're outside of that. So there's a couple, even a large storm pipe through there that we weren't sure.
Two of them.
Yeah, there's a sewer and a storm that go through there. So they are in the right of way. So those should not be impacted. And then we will just have to modify how right now there's an open swale that kind of comes north to south, like around the corner there.
Mhm.
We're just going to have to work with that to redirect that around.
And as far as stormwater on the site, you're laying everything out, you're showing me snow storage areas. What are you doing with stormwater? Are you going underground with it? Are you going to look at infiltration if possible? Or
I think similar to the prior design, we kind of have that pocket in between the two buildings. It shrunk. We had bioretention there before. We're going to continue to try to use that for bio, and then we're going to have to supplement some additional subsurface, I think, to pick up the change. So.
A lot going on in this site, cramming a lot
It's a
on.
busy little site, right?
I understand why the shift to move the buildings toward the south side of the site, and literally right up against the property line. Unless I'm missing something, some weird provision, you're seeking a variance for those nonconformity. You're over your setbacks.
No.
No?
No, we're compliant with zoning with the current land.
Why am I seeing a building footprint over a?
Yeah, the only part, Mr. Chairman, if I may, the only part that would require relief, as Justin sort of presented, was we had parking, so when the existing lot line today, the parking in the, quote, between the buildings has to be set back more than 40 feet. So under the existing lot line, when we own the,
I'm not talking about the easement or the right-of-way thingy. I'm looking, but
he's looking at the 20-foot max front yard setback
I'm
that
looking at
you've
a lot
shown.
line and a setback line with a building footprint.
that's the
over
maximum setback.
Right, but in the linkage
versus the minimum.
district, the front yard setback is 0.
That's the piece I'm missing. Okay.
Zero
Yep.
to 20, yeah.
Yep.
Gotcha. So then that creates a really interesting condition, right? Because again, this is an instance where you have the road, which is at a much higher elevation than the majority of the site. So I understand that at least for the L-shaped building or sock-shaped building, whatever, that, that variance is made up by a layer of parking, right?
Correct,
And
yeah,
then,
so-
yeah, I would be just very curious to see ultimately and through section what that relationship looks like. And obviously sort of, there's the experience of the building at the street, right? At the street frontage. And there's a residential above there. So you're basically right up against the street on that corner. So that's an experience of an individual living in those units. Then there's the experience of the rest of us who have to sneak a glance or can see the sort of the back end of this and that whole parking elevation, right? Because it's exposed at that point. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is that there's a lot of thinking that needs to go into how all of this is coordinated in a way, because again, the experience at the parking level and in that parking lot is, you're looking at, a story of parking, right? So I'm curious what that.
So you're not really looking.
No, you are. Sure you are. You got it right. Because your first level is parking.
Garage spaces or the
Yeah.
surface spaces?
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is that the first story of the building experience behind the building, that's parking.
Right.
That's a level of parking, right? That you're looking at an elevation that's however you're going to treat it. What's inside that building at that first story is parking.
We are, now that we've been speaking with the applicant and going through the process, right, adjusting it to move forward, knowing that we have a lot of work with DOT.
I know you have a lot of work.
We're going to get site
I'm
sections.
just priming you for
Yeah.
a lot of scrutiny around these
Site sections are
particular
going to be
subjects.
critical, and REA is going to come up and speak to that in just a minute, too, knowing that experience and what this linkage district was designed for. So it's a lot of, the applicant had effectively a zoning, other than the parking, compliant plan, so we're doing.
I'm not talking about, I get it. My question about compliance was just because I didn't understand the zero.
Right.
I get that it is ultimately, for the most part, compliant. I understand the linkages. What I'm saying is, down the road, and I'm sure, my fellow board members will have a lot of thoughts on, and right now what I'm doing is prepping you for a lot of scrutiny around the planning and the experience and the aesthetics, and this is basically on a very prominent corner.
Right.
So that's what I'm getting at.
And if I may, I meant that the prior iteration, which was set back significantly from Beekman, that proposal was also zoning, but for the same parking issue. That was a zoning compliant building too. So we're trying to better, though, the plan by going through this. But your point is well taken, Chairman. Those are going to be addressed there. And
so yes, you're taking some incremental steps from the first time we saw it to this incremental.
And RA will show you what's been cooking.
What's in store?
Well, what's been cooking, and then what's in store will still be in store.
Okay.
All right.
Can I have a question about
sure.
the way you're characterizing this? Has this been labeled or deemed as a surplus property by the state?
So, sorry, just to clarify, the applicant will have to submit an application to DOT, and part of that process, they would have to declare that it's surplus.
But it's not right now.
Correct.
Just so we're consistent.
We've only had very preliminary conversations with DOT. Our traffic consultant spoke with who would be the gatekeeper of DOT properties, as distinct from MTA's gatekeeper, to discuss and initiate that process for surplus.
And do you imagine that as part of that process, the state's going to do traffic analysis to see if any of the this right-of-way can contribute to easing some of the traffic congestion that occurs, which is the worst in the city?
So right, so I don't think, I'm not sure that's declaring it surplus. I'm not sure, and maybe Rich can better address that, and we'll certainly put that in a supplemental submission. But as part of declaring it surplus, they're not going to give you land that they need for DOT purposes. But as has been expressed in prior submissions, there's a significant amount of right-of-way. I mean, if you look we're not changing any of the right-of-way period on the 9D side. We are only talking about adjusting the lot line to kind of reflect really what would probably be the lot line today along Beekman.
I'm just saying that, I'm hoping that somebody who's disinterested can rationally examine that for the benefit, for the cities.
Yeah, and I think you may have brought it up, and I know Mr. Russo had in other conversations, this design and what Rich DeAndrea has designed, the way this line came about was contemplative, that's a word? Maybe that's my fake word.
Contemplating a right-hand
Yeah.
turn
Yeah.
lane there,
Yeah.
possibly.
Understood.
Which would still be
I think-
DOT's right-of-way, regardless of this application.
Right, I just, like I said, I think it'd be prudent for the city to not, to make sure that we accommodate any future needs.
Yep, and as I think Mr. Dates mentioned, we will be submitting a supplemental, traffic analysis that will be going through this, considering, again, more commercial space, the update in the parking, and all that too.
And I just want to back up John, and I think we mentioned before, I'm looking forward to seeing sections.
Yeah.
I think it'll tell us all a lot about what the experience is, right? Against a busy street.
Yes.
And also an important, visually an important location in the city.
You got one chance. You get it right.
Only one meeting, I heard. Just one meeting.
One chance before it's,
you failed.
One chance before it's built and we all have to look at it for the rest of our lives. Anyway, what else can we do for you?
Mr. Siegel will just quickly show you what's proposed, the one chance, one opportunity. He's going to rap like Eminem and.
This is a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Good evening. So, yeah, we submitted updated floor plans that correspond to the new proposed site plan. And so, like Justin and Taylor were mentioning, it does do two things. Once we have the design, I think it'll improve the streetscape instead of having that big empty yard in the front there. And then also, it does move it away from the residential properties, so that there's more opportunity for screening, separation. I'll just go through these plans a little bit. So on the larger building, that increased in size. And so we have more apartments in there, fewer in the smaller building, but the total number of apartments is still 64. We were able to get more indoor parking spaces, and we'll definitely pay attention to that site section and the view from the back there, because that is just a garage. So those are those new plans.
Cool. I'm going to say it now in probably every single planning board meeting until you're approved, and it should go into the record. No, we don't want to see any mechanical units on the roof.
Yep. They will be screened, taken care of.
That 3 strikes, you're out.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else?
No, I mean, we'll have the site sections and the
Can I
facade designs.
Awesome.
just make one quick comment that when you are working on the designs and the elevations, just an ask whether it's possible to take a look at some of the photos of the old West End that were at the Historical Society and see whether there's any features that you could pick up or incorporate that would be evocative of that. And when I looked at them, the only thing that jumped out at me were some structures with round brick arches. It was like one of the few things I saw in the existing photos that was kind of distinctive, and I don't know if that's something you can work with or not.
So west end of Maine, or?
The West End being the former Beekman, the neighborhood that was demoed during urban renewal. Over the end of last year, the Historical Society had a photo exhibit. There's not a ton of photos, but like I said, there were some things that was in looking at some of the brick buildings. There were some ground floor. Looked like maybe commercial frontages with round brick arches over the windows.
And that might work because in the smaller building, in order to make up for the grade, we have that little arcade in the front. So, things like that could pick up on those things.
And look who's here. Oh, she's gone.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I looked.
She could just probably have some in her pocket.
Dang.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Yeah, no, we'll look at that.
Thank you.
Can I just add, I also have that miscellaneous business item, the extension. Can I take 2 minutes of?
Well, I'll put it this way.
Finish this one.
Yeah, want me to sit down?
No. We're gonna go to item number 6.
Yeah.
Unless you have a compelling reason that you have to get to the hospital or something like that.
I want to hang out as long as I can.
Scheduled for 11 o'clock or something.
I don't know. I think your attorney has set a really bad example for everybody.
I'll be happy to sit down.
Thank you.
All right. No, that's
Thank
it.
you.
That's it for me.
So
on
we're
that.
going to move with that. We're actually going to take a quick 1-minute break. I need to reset after the M&M. I said one chance.
I think it was.
We ready to resume tonight's entertainment?
You guys remember the team. When it's cold in here, people move.
Well, yeah, it was nice outside.
All right, we're back in action.
Well, that's okay. It's 9 o'clock.
I know, we blew past 9 o'clock, so.
Told you.
Come
I
on,
tried.
got things
I
to do.
told you.
People to see.
One day,
places to go.
one day we'll make it. There was that brief, wonderful period where we only had 1 or 2 agenda items, right?
I must have missed that.
So we're going to move to item number 6, review of application for site plan approval at 19 Henry Street Townhomes, submitted by Lori Joseph Builders Incorporated. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Taylor Palmer with Cuddy and Fader on behalf of the applicant.
All right, we're going to,
I mean,
it's
that's
the
it.
new year, we're going to get serious here.
Sorry.
No, that's
serious,
okay.
serious face. I'm
If you
joined
can't
by
laugh, it's
Dan
not worth
Kohler, our project engineer from Hudson Land Design, as well as and our project architect for the application is Dan Stokoza. As the chairman mentioned, we are before you this evening in connection with an application for site plan approval. We're proposing to redevelop the property with 4 two-story townhouses. For 4 total units. I probably said that wrong, but 4 total units, townhouse-style development. So before I turn it over to Dan to walk you through the site plans that are on the screen, we did just want to give you all a quick background regarding the application, as it's our first appearance before you all for this application. Thank you for denying that request for the architect before us. As we first discussed with city staff at a pre-submission meeting on April 29th, the premises is presently classified in the T, or transitional district, so this will be sort of the second application before you all in this district. We do abut property that's in the R15 zoning district, as well as, of course, the CMS across the street. And the property is not classified in the HDLO. So the surrounding area does include a mix of commercial, residential, not-for-profit uses, including a local business for a dentist. There was, of course, the former automobile repair shop at 5 Henry Street, which is now a pretty cool potential rehab to the Garage Works project. Hopefully that comes together for the studios and the community programming facility there. So that's a pretty cool project. The property is also across the street from the city's parking lots behind the commercial uses on Main Street. The property is presently improved with a residence and some accessory structures, and we're proposing to demolish those structures for the purpose of the application. Dan is going to go into this a little bit more sort of visual detail to the extent the board will look forward tonight, but again, we're proposing 4 attached two-story townhouse. I'm going to have to word this in a way that makes sense. It's 4 units in a building.
4 two-story
yes.
units.
Yes, thank you. Each of the units are going to be about 900 square feet each, and they will have 1-car garage serving each of those. There is a second parking space. I know one of the comments was regarding 2 spaces, but a space directly in front of each of those garages, all within the site itself. This is also a commercial zoning district, not a residential district. As detailed in the submitted elevations, the townhouses were designed with various stone and brick components, so we're trying to complement sort of the built environment. It is a very juxtaposed built environment in that area, but we're certainly mindful
That's
of
putting it kindly.
Yeah, yeah. So we did, we spoke to Dane Stokoza when this was coming forward. He said, look, this has to be, we want to try and get a lot of articulation with this and try and make it, to the extent that it would be of a community character, doing so, understanding again that we're across from the parking lots and CMS, and then of course the R15 district. So procedurally, we are seeking site plan approval from the board. We designed it to be fully zoning compliant dimensionally, and otherwise we understand that it does not require variances. Again, that was sort of the point of the second, highlighting the second space, which I think we'll articulate more, particularly on our supplemental submission. We did have a chance to review the city's consultant comment memorandum, so something we will speak to the city attorney about after this meeting is the same way I'll learn how to say 4 two-story buildings.
You'll get it. You'll get it. one
We'll
of
get
these
there. The ownership structure will be something similar to like a River Ridge or a Ferry Landing. So we're just trying to structure it in a way, and whether that requires a subdivision or other form of cutting up the parcels, realistically, just to not have to do a condominium form of ownership, which is a burdensome. You remember our application dealing with discussions similarly on the internal lot subdivision concepts. It's just a very difficult way to finance construction and the like. So we will be coordinating that and hopefully working with Bruce and Jennifer to sort of tell you what that is from an ownership standpoint, and how that, if that necessitates any type of a subdivision to go along with it. So with that, I will turn to Dan to walk you through our site plans, and then any questions.
If it becomes a subdivision, that's a very different type of application you've got, right?
It would be, it's the way that it would be the same application, it's just how it's being classified. You would create a plat, but ultimately, we're just trying to make sure that this lot can be developed as a multifamily building. Like, it's not that it can't be, the old adage for River Ridge and others was because they had to be townhomes. Multifamily wasn't permitted, so it was townhomes and other structures that were sort of the driver of those. So this is, you could be multifamily, you could be two-family attached, you can be single-family. There's a sort of a plethora of uses based on the recent changes for the transitional district. Of course, this was the PB district, right? So this was the parking district before. So this now is in T, which is not even a residential district. It's considered a commercial district in the code. So how we characterize that form of ownership is really kind of what that is. So that if it's an HOA, may necessitate a subdivision, but that's just so that you can create tax lots.
And again, what I'm saying is that the application and the plat would look very different should you determine that they're going to be separate units. That's all I'm saying. So, yeah, okay, clear. Okay, you had something else?
Just Mr. Kolk.
Thank you. Okay, not a lot for me to really explain here. I mean, basically, we have the shared driveway type of setup for each of the units to go into the one-car garages off of that Henry Street. The site is extremely flat, so we have some very light grading associated with the development, the redevelopment of the parcel, just to move the stormwater along. I think, John, you'll probably get into this when you talk about your review letter, but we also thought, after seeing some of the catch basins and the elevations, that we're probably going to switch and send our stormwater to this catch basin over here on the right-hand side of the view, as opposed to the left. Water and sewer connections right off from Henry Street are proposed to serve each of the units. That's generally it for now.
Question. Why did my battery go so quickly? So two things. The relationship of these new units to some form of consistency in terms of frontage across the street, Henry Street. And then, this concept of garages facing the street and facing the public view has come up in the past. So I want to talk about that. And I'm not sure whether the T district allows that specifically, but it's not great what you're planning here, just especially in relationship to the garages. So those are two items I'd love to talk about a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, certainly we're if there's, as far, I think Dan's trying to pull up the existing condition just to show you, I think the existing garage today fronts.
Oh, yeah, no, I know we've seen it. I know the street. I live.
Right. Yes, you might be living close by.
I live very close by. And that's a little creepy, you know where I live.
Well, if you recall, we represented one of the 5 iterations of 5 Henry Street that finally came to pass.
And then my other question has to do with, there's a beautiful old maple tree on the site. What are you doing with that? They're coming down?
I can address, we can certainly report back. I don't know that that's proposed.
So, yeah, my thinking is that obviously, this street is a bit of a jumble, right? It's a mishmash of different aesthetics and time periods, and it does face, the sort of the back end of Main Street buildings and parking lot. It doesn't mean it shouldn't be given all, due consideration in terms of something new here, and again, it being the best it can possibly be.
Yes, we know that
This potentially sets the tone for
Absolutely.
Other future development, right?
Yeah, we expressed that to Dan Stokoza when they were putting this, that the site plan, when they showed a rendering, they had to get more involved than they would typically in a normal, whether it's a single family or two family, they needed to get that visual represented, because we know this is an important,
Yeah. So
proposal.
the prospect of moving car parking toward the back, I know it ostensibly starts to add some additional paved area, but can also make the street frontage a different experience. What are your thoughts on that?
As far as what can we do up on the street frontage?
Yeah, about moving, garage and parking
Why is it set so far back?
and yeah, exactly.
I think it's to accommodate the second parking space in part
Right.
for what's currently required under the zoning amendments. Again, not to go there, but the zoning amendments are considering reductions to one space per unit. Some of that was part of one of the original iterations did consider driveways around to the rear, but that ate up any level of sort of green space on the site. And,
I don't know.
yeah.
We haven't seen it, so we can't be convinced of that. And I understand that, it limits the ability for the building to basically be as wide as it is. But ultimately, what you're creating here is, a lot of paved area in the front of the building with a view to parking cars and garage doors, right? Not great.
I think we have to get, go ahead.
The fact that it is a transitional zone, and as you said, it's not a residential zone, begs the question of why are you putting 4 residences without like a multi-use
Right, so
project?
the code was changed so that this district itself, it's just classified that way. There's limitations. For example, if you were in a residential district, you would have to have the parking setback 5 feet from the property line. That's the only real difference. That the reference there was that. So it's not it's a commercial district in name, but the uses are that of a transitional district, right? You're transitioning from the CMS, the most densely developable district, and the requirements for what you can build on Main Street versus what you can build in the R15. So it's considering both of those classifications. This is a townhouse development, right? We're trying to make a nice looking structure that, hopefully will add a bit of articulation over the existing residents on this site in particular, and the parking area the large parking area that's there on the property. So, we have put a lot there. This is not just this was put together with those considerations. But we hear you on.
Did you have an engineer designing this for you?
No, that's not.
That's
That's their architect. That's Dan Stokoza's. That's not our
Oh, it is?
engineer.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not Mark Day.
Right, can I make one comment though? And that, just that, I kind of am in
Nothing
favor.
against engineers.
Or Brian.
I'm in favor of the idea of varying the facades, but you've got like 2 kind of Princess Anne, front-facing gable Victorians on the ends, and then in the middle it's like a stone salt box and a board and batten utility building. These are things that would never be together. You can definitely, if they wanted to continue the Victorian concept, which half of it is, you would totally find examples historically of like 4 Victorian townhomes where it's like a front-facing gable, a bay window, a front-facing gable, a little turret on top of a bay, and they would vary it, but the style would be consistent.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have cheek by jowl stone salt box with a Victorian next to it, and then like I said, like the board and battens, like a utility building, like a carriage house or a barn. So it's really, it's like a chimera. It's all these different pieces that don't go together.
Word of the month. As one of my professors probably once said, your building has an identity crisis. So I would second that. It's
Imagine if it was drawn by an engineer.
And if they do make changes to
Have a
make
lot of
it,
right angles.
if they do make some changes to make it coherent, but, don't fall into the, like, I was kind of crushed when, I think it's, the development next to the Prophecy Theater, where one of the units, they're different facades, but they just uniformly, homogeneously board and battened it all in the same color. So it was trying to be something different, and then it was like somebody just homogenized it, and it's the saddest thing ever. It's like, what happened? So yeah, just.
There's nothing
There are
wrong with
sadder
a
things,
townhouse
but-
looking exactly the same, like,
bummer.
like brownstones look lovely together, all just brownstone.
Sure, yeah.
It's-
Yeah.
Okay,
That's
can I-
what, somebody said once, there's also beauty in repetition, which
Yeah.
is what you're saying, right? So yeah, you can do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is really ugly.
Oh, yeah,
Just
no, I think,
putting
but
it
yeah,
mildly.
you're right. Sorry, did you have something, Kevin?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk to, I was involved with some of the discussion around the T district. And originally it was intended to prioritize commercial development, right? But also allow residential development to allow for different uses and different needs for different owners, different lot sizes, right? My concern about this is that it's set back too far, right? And that what you're going to see is basically an ocean of asphalt with 4 cars in it, right?
Yep.
In an area that already has a ton of asphalt.
And a ton of cars.
Yeah, and the opportunity we have, right, is basically to create an edge on a very open area that's very prominent. There are festivals and all these other things that happen in those parking lots. It's behind a historic building. If we were more concerned about maintaining a street edge, which is more common in a commercial district of this age of this part of the city, the age of this part of this block, that it's going to be beneficial to the owners and to the community, because nobody needs that extra space. Yeah, I would almost, and we can visit the parking requirements and other things at a later date, but it's a lot of expense, it's a lot of runoff to manage, it's a lot of space in the back that you're abandoning. The whole site is pushed back to the limit in the back, right? And all the extra spaces up front. There's actually more than you need for the cars, for one thing. And you don't have to pay for any of that lot in the back. And it spaces you away from all your neighbors. It increases the amount of distance. And the more that it maintains that Henry Street, or the commercial building that's on the corner of Henry and
The garage?
yes, the garage. The closer, the more that the context that this building will be creating is one of a traditional urban street, right? What this is something like, well, we were just referencing it, the on 9D, the townhomes that are there, which are fine for a feeder road, right? That's in the suburbs, or Fishkill Strip Mall, and these other things where you're moving very fast, and it doesn't really matter. You're not really fooling anybody about whether or not this is an actual historic building, right? You're just sort of trying to make a nod towards traditional house forms. But it's a lot, there's many simpler things you can do and maintain that articulation and variety and design when you're using a more traditional commercial townhome sort of look and also lot location. That's what I would suggest. It'll benefit everybody.
So with regards to the setback of this building, taking a look at Google Earth, the other homes to the east of this building, this will be kind of in line with the other homes.
The other homes.
The other homes.
But,
Right.
if we think about,
And the nursery school.
yep, well, again, it's a mishmash, right? So it's about what we want to, what sort of tone we want to set for the potential for future development. And I'll just submit, this isn't it. Right, because, right, this is potentially the sort of first of a few of its kind. Hopefully somebody does something with that awful professional building. So, yeah, in its current context, it's a bit of a mishmash, but I see this more as setting the tone for future, right? So I think we really got to think about how it relates to the street.
Understood.
Right. And then this, yes, I think we've all hit on it a couple of times, this notion of just full frontage of asphalt driveway with cars in it. That's not a pleasant street experience. It might be, in Queens, but it's
It's a very wide street and a very large parking area across the street.
Yeah, it is. It's a really wide street, and it just begs to question, what is this? It's odd. It's just really odd. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. I say things like that all the time, and I'm not sorry.
Yeah, that's why it's the transition, right? It's not single-family residential, it's not CMS. Density was added to this district to accommodate this, to try and reinvent
all
this
of that,
transition.
yes, but it didn't necessarily anticipate this. I think that's what we're talking about
Yeah.
in this incarnation. So
Yeah.
I know you're listening.
With this
And
video
yes-
and these links will be sent directly to the engineer architects
Great, and the owner, I hope.
and the owner.
Cool. All right. I'm running out of battery. Anything else? That personally and my iPad.
Took that meeting.
No, that's it. I don't think, for purposes of the application, we're still going through the process. I mean, we understand it will be classified as an unlisted action. I don't know if we're in that position yet, and I just sort of defer to Jennifer if we're in it circulating for lead agency or if that should be held off for,
I mean, the board can
We could
authorize it.
certainly
Yeah, you
talk
can
about it. I mean,
authorize it.
it's never too early, in my mind, for that. But, I mean, if you're going to go ahead with this, sure. Yeah, we could certainly discuss noticing intent to act as lead agency and potentially act on that. Any questions or notes from the board there, or should we otherwise make a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Karen,
Second.
second by Kevin, all in favor?
Aye.
So, at least got something from us tonight.
I'm out of M&M puns.
Something
so.
of value in terms of a design lesson and an action on lead agency.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
So, next up, I think we're going to move the request for an extension to the very end.
I think it's at the very end right now.
Good evening, I'm Taylor Palmer.
All right, you can sit back down now.
I
So,
need about 30 minutes for this one.
wouldn't be out of character.
This is 16 West Main Street. They're asking for a 6-month extension. I believe everything's been approved and signed off, reviewed by the city attorney, the building department, and the planning board. They're working with the construction team on finalizing some logistics, so they just are asking for a little more time for that.
A little, 6 months.
And this is, a building permit hasn't been issued, right? This is the extension, because you've got,
This
for the
is-
special permit, you have
Yeah.
1 year to apply for the building permit.
Right.
And then once you get the building permit, there's 2 years to construct, but
Right.
there's no building permit issue, right?
Right, you
Yeah,
want
so
to
this
keep
is the
your special
extension
permit
to get a
alive.
building permit.
Yeah. Okay. Any comments or questions by the board? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion to approve. Motion by Randall.
Seconded.
Second by Len. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Wasn't that worth the wait?
Yeah, that was fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
Okay.
night, everybody.
Good evening, safe home.
Thank you.
Now we move to the best part of the agenda, that being miscellaneous business, and we have a few architectural reviews. First one being certificate of appropriateness, facade. This is 1201 North Avenue. Good evening. Hi.
Hi, I'm Maggie Fay. This is Katie
to
Tucker.
meet you.
We own the house.
Okay, so tell us about what you're doing.
We are painting it a different color of white.
Wow.
Yeah. Bright white to slightly off-white. Yes. We're also removing the shutters. Yes.
Yeah, please take the shutters off. Although,
And
yeah.
that is all, I think.
That's it?
Well, one thing we... One thing that we forgot to include, that if we could do this now, is an accent color for the door, which we
Okay.
can just pass to you.
Don't even worry about it. It looks great.
Do you have the other color? It's because it didn't come through on the.
Yeah.
No, it's, I just.
They only
No,
do
no,
veneers
come on,
now.
yeah. The reason why I'm doing it is because it's driving me nuts that people are Xeroxing this and then.
And the colors are never
The colors
same.
washes
Yeah,
out
totally.
and, I just
Changes
can't.
it.
Yeah. And
Yeah, no, it's great. Okay. Motion to approve. Motion by Randall. Second by Lynn. All in favor? Sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
He seconded it.
Thank you. Thanks for sitting through all that.
Good luck, enjoy.
Okay, next item. We're going to move
Use
to
good ladder safety.
new.
All right, good.
So we've got a new single-family house, 144 Spring Valley Street facade. Evening. That's okay. We should have your application here.
Stucco and cedar. I don't know if you just.
Okay.
Simple image. This is the demo of that, right?
So, thank you. I'm Paula Dowd. I'm the owner, and I'm also the builder. And would love to have restored that house, but it is literally falling apart at the seams, and the foundation is small pebbles and stones. There's real no basement or anything, so it's got to come down. And my architect and designer have come up with a very rectangular design, very modern. And my idea was that it sort of channels the existing house where it's very rectangular, and it'll be a palette for lots of trees, which we need, and lots of green and some habitats and so forth. It'll be sitting on the existing footprint, and it preserves the rear yard, which is lovely. It's terraced. Beatty Watson is doing a topography, so we'll know how the water runoff will go, but it does preserve the beautiful mountain view behind it. So that's it. Demolish. Showed you the proposed house. Gray stucco with cedar dimensions and so forth. And there are a couple of hip roofs on the street that look like flat roofs, if you have any questions about the flat roof. And that's it. And I'm hoping you'll grant me permission to build this.
Oh, I know this.
Questions, comments? Board?
No, it's definite improvement.
It is somewhat out of character, the rest of the houses.
Not consistent with really anything on the street.
I know, but what's worse than fake historic? So rather than try to rebuild what's there, shouldn't we start to move into the future? And for me, this is a wonderful palette for what we really need, which are trees and green gardens and habitats
Yep.
for birds and so
certainly-
forth. So it's, the materials are natural. We're using the existing footprint. I mean,
Yep.
what do you want, another vinyl gable house
like-
like everyone else builds? I mean,
I like the materials, and
I
I'm certainly not in
could have
support.
bought 12 photographs of other contemporary homes that have been built in Beacon, and they're beautiful, and people are living in them, so I just,
Yep. So our purview is the context within which you're looking to build, and our parameters are they're limited, but one of the criteria is the context and whether or not a new proposed building is either too similar, right? So that's the one end of the spectrum, or too dissimilar. This is, like I said, it's wildly out of context. Go ahead.
I agree with that. Just the
but
one thing I'd say is, 'cause
enough with
I'm
the
pretty familiar
the
with
fake
this.
barns. I
I'm pretty
mean,
familiar
let's
with this
mix it up
street.
a
Like,
bit.
it's a fairly, there's a lot of eclectic architectural styles along this street. That bottom lines it.
Yep.
This, I don't know of anything that looks really modern like this does, but this is not some like design residence community or wherever where all the houses have been similar.
No, I'm not advocating for that either. I'm just saying, I'm giving the board and the applicant an understanding of the context and the purview of the board, right? I'm not advocating for one over the other. Again, I'm trained as an architect, and you have your taste, I have mine. They divert here, right? So, but it's all subjective, so I'm not going to get too crazy about it. I think some of your proportions are terrible, but that's as far as I'll go, and I can't tell you to change them.
Well, that was my architect, so
I
we'll
understand.
tell her that.
I understand. But that's, again, that's as far as I'll go, because unless you're willing to alter based on some of our feedback, you don't have to. So if you want that feedback, I'll give it to you.
No, I totally want it, yes.
But I will also say that regardless of the similar or too dissimilar, and I quite honestly think this goes way toward the too dissimilar, and I'm not saying that from my perspective, because I'm all for modern architecture, I'm all for all styles of architecture, and I'm all for variety. And I'm not for, fake Disneyland or fake anything. I'm for authenticity, but I'm also for context. This is out of context, and that's my opinion. But
May
it's
I say
also
something, though?
taking into
But there is no
consideration.
context on that street. There's no.
I believe there is.
Okay.
I believe there is. And it's not just the street also, it's the larger context as well. So, again, I'm not arguing with you, I'm just sharing as a community member and a board member, number one, our purview, and number two, feedback on what we're seeing and what you're sharing with us. So, hopefully, you can take that for what it is. Again, I think materiality, great. I still think it, is a little stark. I also think your proportions on your windows and your doors is really off in relationship to the horizontality of the building itself. I like the fact that it strikes two planes, just by the way it's sort of massed. It has very little sort of resolution, just in terms of, how it kind of addresses the street. To me, it looks like an office building, quite honestly. And, when you think about an entry and what that experience is to not just the people, living in it, you, but the experience of the viewer, it's uninspiring, meaning it's not welcoming, right? So again, these are all my observations. They are subjective. They're for you to do with what you want. And that's all I'll say. Anyone else?
I agree with the window proportions. I think the windows are just really small in comparison to the expanse of the facade. I like the setback of the facades, but I think the height differential it's like not different enough. It's like a little too close to, between the roof lines, and I think that it is quite dissimilar from anything in the neighborhood.
Anyone else?
This isn't the first contemporary building that was proposed for residential.
Of course not.
Historically, I'd say 10, 12 years ago, there was a contentious application like this. It was denied, and it was a little bit more transitional than this is. And subsequent to that, there were other applications that were similarly contemporary or modern or modernist detailing that were approved, that were in more coherent and, let's say, affluent or more fixed up neighborhoods, right? That had better sidewalks and better landscaping and higher quality neighbors, right?
There's a very modern building being constructed at the corner of Verplank and Willow that we had some trepidation about. But
Yes,
I thought it was going to
I've
look
seen that.
amazing, and I think it's looking amazing
It is.
as it's being
Yeah, it really
constructed.
is.
But at the same time, we recently had a design on Highland Place, one of the Highland Place structures, that was about as uninspiring to me as this one. And we initially rejected it, and they went back and reworked it quite a bit. And I think we felt better about it on the second go-round, and it was approved.
And for the record, the first one you mentioned, Kevin, the Verplank one, I remember that one well.
Oh, it's contentious, right? I only heard about it. I wasn't
You
in
were-
the meeting.
It
so-
was. And
You were not good. I was there for that one, and it
What
was.
do you think about the Highland Place contemporary one? It's a bit odd, isn't it?
I'm not thrilled. I would.
My opinion, can I tell you
But
my opinion
you're
is that...
giving me good feedback.
Yeah.
I agree with the window, the scale of the window. I love the idea of raising the other building, portion up a bit. That's really, my architect did this, I didn't, so
Yeah,
we
sure.
can do this. I just want you to think about the fact that the driveway, and I don't really go for parking on the street. There are signs there that say reserved parking. I mean, I think that's weird. So I'm trying to create parking. There's a very steep slope to the driveway. So we're going to try to put a garage there, and we're going to extend the driveway a bit so there's parking there so people don't park in the street. I think that's weird on Spring Valley, but I don't really know if that's legal or not.
It is.
So-
I think it's legal. Yeah.
So we don't waste any time. Are you okay with the contemporary design? And should I work with your suggestions? Maybe you can even give me more, or should I just say, no, we can't do this?
I was going to say that the first example Kevin mentioned, the one on
Willow.
Verplank,
Yeah.
the one that was finally built, I was very much in support of.
And
Because it did respond to the contextuality by sort of recognizing, some traditional form
It's got the gable.
Yeah, the
in a
gable ends.
modern way, but in a very, what I would consider a very elegant, and the proportions
Yeah.
resonated, right?
There's that cool reveal on the gable ends, and
Oh, I love
that area is super eclectic. Way more eclectic than Spring Valley is in
put
terms of the structures.
Really?
Yeah, it can be
Not
pretty-
like,
Oh, you're
it's a
on
lot of
Spring
like, it's a
Valley,
lot of.
right?
I walk up with my dog almost every other day. It's very.
I should
you
have
know,
checked with you.
And look, if you were,
I'm there all the time.
going for, and again, I'm not advocating for copying anything,
Yeah.
but if you were going for a sort of, Walter Gropius kind of, early modern effect here, which is this is kind of like sort of nodding toward, you would work on your proportions much more, right? There's a study that's the sort of the whole point of that era of design. There's a study in proportion when it comes to this kind of level of, modern, unadorned architecture.
Yeah, if you're going to go that spare, you really have to look at first of all, the relationship between the windows
Yep.
and the overall composition.
Yep.
And,
Well said.
I'm all for modern design.
Same.
I just think it needs to be done well. And, yeah.
Yeah, the irony about this is that if you do a traditional building, nobody's going to complain if you do a shitty job of it, or if you do a clumsy
I will.
or use. Well, no, of course you complain, but it won't. There's very less chance. It's less risky, right? When you do, you're more ambitious when you do contemporary design because there's a higher level of expectations, and there's actually when you are standing out, right? It's like when you dress nicer, you actually have to dress a little bit nicer. You have to pay more attention to that because you're suddenly drawing attention to yourself, right? You're not just blending in and wearing what everybody else is. So in this case, you're actually you're consciously have to, I think, because of this is a public process, right? And we're sort of standing in for the public in a small way, that I think you have a higher responsibility to respond to what everybody here is saying, which is like proportion. The materials, I'm not that concerned about the materials, but when you have minimalist forms, right? The small gestures you have, there's a lot of attention drawn to the few things that you are doing, right? And I would suggest, if it was me, right, but that you would do one or two things that weren't conventional, that actually were a little risky, that actually worked, right? Because then it's worth it taking the risk. Because you've done this, like you do a special detail, just the door. Just the door has an aspect to it that is unique or innovative or in some way responds to something you feel about or the designer felt about. So that is, I think, a design approach that can work without being very expensive and without it being like, I also think that I'm not a fan of not articulating the different, like weathering and other construction elements, right? It's actually very difficult to hide, in reality, lintels and sills and the parapets and other things. And it's actually a good idea to articulate them slightly if you're doing a minimalist thing, because of waterproofing, just practical issues. That you don't end up, things don't end up looking as simple when they're constructed sometimes. So but that's just my, you know, if you're going to do something minimal, it actually takes a lot of detailing and attention to construction. And also it's worth the extra pass to do it correctly because you're drawing attention to it. And I would like to see it not brought into disrepute in this town, because I think it's part of the diversity that should be allowed, and the flexibility and in certain neighborhoods. There's some neighborhoods that are all Victorian buildings, and really, it's not appropriate to. But there's an opportunity, I think, in most neighborhoods, a lot of neighborhoods, to increase the design range.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, you've got a great opportunity, and I think Karen, you know, and Kevin as well summed it up nicely. This is an opportunity to, if you're willing to take another pass,
Totally.
hit composition.
It's a very challenging site, and if it's
Sure.
very terraced and.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, look, I know
The
you're.
form of the window, too, are they double hungs? I mean,
Yeah, I
they're,
mean, that will change. I don't know. maybe
they're
they
not,
can do
like, the
architect.
window style and the architectural
it doesn't
style are
match.
at odds.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of windows out there.
But can you give me some direction in terms of the, you know, the building itself?
Yeah,
I
when-
mean, are you okay with the, you live there, what, of the,
Yeah, I'm not an architect, though. I'm not going to
The
go too far on the
rectangle,
limb.
I know,
What do you
but-
mean when you say articulation? Because that was really the question I had, too. Are we talking about the roof line, or are we,
Yeah,
like...
look at it this way. So you've got a very long expanse on the gray part, right? And it's really only, you know, sort of marked by windows, right? Punched windows. It's very. All I'll say is it's very long. It's very monotonous, and you've got this mishmash of really oddly sort of composed windows, right? So composition
so
is key.
definitely change the windows, but I'm thinking, I like your idea of raising the back.
I think,
back
yes, that
piece
little sliver
would give
is
it
just
a
a
lot
little
more
bit
too much. I mean,
you'll never see
you're
it.
not going to see it from the street, so, you know, we're responding to its composition in straight, flat-on elevation. I wouldn't worry about that too much, because I think, you know, there's obviously some articulation by the fact that you're changing materials from the concrete
Yeah.
to the wood. But just think about that I don't know what that is, it's got to be 30 feet?
It's really
Something to that effect, that expanse of, like, you know, gray concrete, could anywhere from 30 to 50?
It's 50.
Wow, yeah.
With nothing to cast a shadow, no sills on the windows or anything that would
And
create
that's-
some breaks in the facade.
I think your architect needs to look at houses, Bauhaus,
Bauhaus, yeah.
because this sort of looks like it, but it's not it, especially those windows. It's
Yeah.
really disturbing, but
And then also think about your experience of coming in on a rainy day and having to fumble for your keys while it's pouring on you, and you've got absolutely no articulation over the door, nothing to shield you.
No, I agree. And I didn't explain this, but what, we are designing it so that you would actually enter through the garage or through the side here. And yeah, you're right, there would be an awning, but we assume that no one's going to use the front door other than maybe guests, because the stairs are already
Sure.
in place. It's concrete, there's a big concrete wall in front that's been there for a long time.
Well, I
Yeah,
would
We're sort
submit-
of stuck with using a lot
Yeah.
of components that are there that make it, you know, difficult.
Yeah. And for that reason, I would submit, why did your architect recommend putting a front door there then? If you're not going to
it
use it.
could be
Well, because
recessed.
it'd be weird without a door.
Yeah.
on the
It could be
front.
recessed. It could have a very simple, you know, articulation over the door to mark it.
Recess. I like that idea, recess, yes.
And also, it's an opportunity to unite the two.
So you're not saying
Forms.
just nix the whole
No.
rectangular
No, no.
shape? Because I don't want to waste time, your
No.
time,
No.
our time.
I think,
If we can work with this, I'm happy to keep going.
The recommendation to look at Bauhaus, Gropius, I mean, it's of that ilk. I mean, didn't use a lot of wood, Louis Kahn, you know. And, you know, this is recorded, so if your architect wants to
Hopefully.
sit through the whole thing or scroll through fast to this point, you know, they're more than welcome to. So, yeah, we want to be constructive, we want to be helpful, and, you know, not just criticize for criticism's sake. And you have, hopefully, the benefit of, the vast majority of us are, you know, of the, you know, designer, architect ilk, so
Great.
we kind of know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And we live here, and we're your neighbors, and we love the, you know, community, and so, you know, we want to make sure that others looking at and experiencing your building are, you know, have an opportunity to be inspired, potentially.
As long as you're not saying switch to gable and
No,
stay with this.
no, we would never tell you to
Alright.
just go pure Victorian or brick, there's enough of that.
We'll be back.
I'd say too, just because I think I'm, just by virtue of having lived there 17-plus years, probably more familiar with the street than other people up here, but I'm not a design professional, I'm not going to claim to be it. There are a lot of eclectic houses, and I feel like a modern design can fit in pretty well.
I agree, yeah.
It's just, what people keep saying about articulation, it's like it's too
No,
rectangular.
I totally agree.
Just a little bit
Yeah.
would make it like,
Yeah.
Right, if you, what Frank Lloyd Wright would have done, right? If you just put an element that like transitioned between both of them, like a horizontal porch, a flat roof or something, right? That would simply detailed like the rest of it, that would create a shadow line, it would unite them, it wouldn't be like two things jamming together, right? Even though they're different. And that's one strategy, is to sort of diminish that, the contrast or overlap it, you know, or you know what I'm saying? So there's a number of design strategies that people can use to sort of make things feel more home-like or lessen that sort of starkness.
I agree. I totally agree.
Well,
Some
we really
recessing
appreciate
and
your
stuff.
patience with us.
No, thanks so much. I
So
appreciate it.
we would look forward to, you know, hearing
Yeah,
from you next
we'll be
month.
back.
Thank you.
Hopefully next month, right?
Yes, yeah, come on back.
right,
Thank you so much.
Here's your samples.
Oh, yeah, would you like your samples back?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and so hopefully that was helpful. Yeah.
These are good, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's yours.
very lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, next victim. Sorry, I don't have the agenda up because my computer thing died.
It is
265.
Main Street.
Yes. Welcome. I promise we won't bite. How are you? So, we have a sign. Long Cha Thai Cafe. Yeah, it's a pretty nicely representative image. Oh, sure.
Yes, and this is kind of the picture and the side. And,
Yeah. What am I looking at here? This is the background, like the white part.
They give, that is sample. They just give
material,
us
for
the
material.
they give us
So this is what this logo will be printed on top of,
yeah,
is what you're saying.
kind of that. Yeah, we already made, but they,
Oh. It's a good thing you came to us for approval.
I cannot take that.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, okay.
Is there,
No, it's not lit in any way.
No.
is there an existing bracket, or?
Yeah, looks like it. They're going with the
Oh,
existing
yeah.
decorative
It's probably
bracket.
the same thing, isn't it?
Yep. Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Randall, second by David. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Good luck.
Motion by Randall. You're all set. Have fun. Hang your sign up.
Wait.
Now, when you come, we'll talk, we have to talk about what's going on over there. But we'll issue that permit after we resolve the issue. All right.
Oh, so mysterious.
Yeah.
Something else, okay.
That's serious.
What do we have next?
512 Main Street.
512 Main Street, next on the agenda. Do we have that person here?
They gave up.
They gave Oh, they're like, I've had enough of this crap. Okay, so who's next?
Can we prove it anyway?
290 South
I
Avenue.
thought that sign was already up.
290 South. Hi. Thanks for waiting through all that. Miss you guys. What do you got? You gonna make this easy on us?
Oops, sorry, you're looking at the files. I didn't bring any equipment.
Yeah,
What do you got? How bad is it?
We have, it on our computers.
The architect, Bill had a meeting with you? He came up, I think?
This is the new house on South Avenue.
Oh, it's a house?
Yes, Bill came up with that.
It's a new house on South Avenue.
Okay.
Backed by Chevron.
Woodneath, like the backside of Woodneath on South Avenue.
Oh, my old neighborhood.
Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Which way is the street?
It's aluminum panel siding, correct?
Yes.
What color are you?
Honestly, open to suggestion so long as it's neutral. I don't want it black, I don't want it white.
Okay, so the walls you have listed as granite and the roof is slate gray.
Yeah, I'm looking, it's a super exposed hillside. We own the 130 South Ave existing, and it just gets beat to hell and back every time there's a storm, so
Weather.
we're going for durable.
I was trying to spot this. Is this the parcel that's got all of those lilac trees on it, or?
This is
Or is it?
Unlikely. It's next to Christie House.
Is that 300, the one that's at 300 South Avenue? Hold on a second.
Are the colors in the application what you're submitting?
There's like a blue roof and a, is that what the?
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Is this the Rose
Here, you
property?
want to, here, this is,
Come here, Cricker. So,
We're
yeah.
going for just generally grayish neutral, and with the application, he should have said.
Oh, maybe it's just because, yeah,
The
maybe it's
existing
just the
structure.
catalog cut
Yeah,
shows
it's
up.
just the-
Yeah, it's not, yeah.
catalog cut sheet.
And at the top, there's a listing of colors.
Is there a site?
And it's this first page after the first. And the second page.
We made our choice to go aluminum for durability, which leads to a limited selection of colors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, totally.
Yep. Okay.
Aluminum siding?
Yep.
Is it set back from South Avenue, or I'm?
A lot. It looks like it's in the
Looks like
middle of
it's a
nowhere. There's not
standing
much
seam.
around.
Okay.
It's, do you ever take a walk down to Madam Brat?
Yeah, no, I know where on
Yeah.
South Avenue it is, just in relation, like, is your driveway long, or is it the house on the street? Like, where
Will
you
the
propose?
driveway cost as much as the house?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, have fun plowing
Oh,
that
this,
in the winter.
this is the lot that was Roseneath, or there was an estate property.
Woodneath.
Woodneath, no, Woodneath?
Rodeneath is behind. Rodeneath is all the mid-century moderns.
Yeah.
But wasn't there another property that was?
Roseneath.
Yeah, it would have been Roseneath.
This is Roseneath.
That's what I was
Roseneath
saying.
Part 2, Part 3. I don't know. Depends how you count.
There are a bunch of, remnants.
Yep.
Brick and stone and other things.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
I used to bump around on this property.
Yeah, it's pretty.
It was right behind my old house. It's pretty. Okay. What do we want to do? Motion to approve?
I'm just, what are we?
Keep going. We're approving the materiality, and I guess the
Design.
the colors and the design.
So as listed in the application.
Yes, exactly. That's all we've got to go on, right? It's
Just
the,
wanted to make
Do
sure.
you not,
Yep.
do you have the renderings? There was,
yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that, this is a question that came up before. The spiral staircase,
Yes.
are the treads set up so that snow will be able to kind of melt through, just so that it's easy on you to have kind of safety during the winter, so it's not accumulating snow and ice on the treads?
That's
I
a
did.
If you're
that's
gonna
a
have
Bruce
like
issue.
Do you know what? I
You're
like
sorry.
that. I went to school in Canada, and I had a friend who fell down spiral stairs and dislocated his shoulder. So yes, important into it.
Yeah, that's a good question, but honestly, that's
Yeah,
a Bruce
sorry.
issue.
It's convenience there too. So it's a different set of requirements.
Yep.
Motion.
Motion to approve by
Second.
Karen, second by whom?
David.
Mr. Jensen.
It's not an exciting design, but it works.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be nice. We wish you luck. All in favor?
Aye. Good luck.
Thank you.
Right?
And last,
46 Main
No,
Street.
246 Main Street. Two more signs.
246 Main. Going once,
God, you're dead
going
last.
twice.
I'm so sorry.
All these people who give up.
508?
Are you 508?
Oh, man.
Thank you. I'm so sorry. We appreciate your levity and patience. Thank you.
So I own a little bookstore. Several of you I recognize as customers.
Thanks for calling us out like that. I know you.
We're going to come in and...
No gift cards are in this transaction. So we just want to add signage to the store. I had a more intricate plan. My previous profession is an experienced designer. I work with architects all the time on pretty large projects.
Where? What firm?
Well, I have my own consultancy. Right now, my biggest client is New York Life Insurance in the city.
Nice.
They have a historic building on Madison Avenue.
Do you know Ed Schlossberg?
Who?
Ed Schlossberg?
No.
ESI?
Oh, I know ESI.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I do that kind of work. So anyway, I thought about doing a more intricate thing, but if I couldn't control all of the facade because I don't own the building, so I decided to lean into what is already there, which is honestly fine. I just need people to know that we sell books and to come in and buy the books. So the only thing that I'm really proposing to add is painted letters in the beige section up top, which was, Stanza is the name of the store. That's where the former Snooki sign was. And that's kind of the, traditional position for putting signage.
Snooki, that's right, I remember.
We have these top windows, which I'm just going to hang emerald, we're going to have curtains made out of emerald green velvet, which I'm sourcing from the place on Main Street. And then I have a color that's a little bit off the beige. It's into the gold family. It's not gold leaf. That's a little over the top for my taste, but it's in the gold family to paint on the windows. So, my real goal is the people who are at tracks across the street or walking on the other side of the street, they can look across and see, oh, that's a bookstore.
Yep.
That's kind of my only real goal here, but I'm not really making any other changes or proposing any other changes, just painting on the glass and painting on the wood there.
Well done.
Is your
Yeah, it's very nice.
Is there coverage of the window within regulation what he wants to do with the painting on the window?
If they're painting their name in there, as long as it's not more than 30% of the glass, of the total glass of the storefront.
And I don't know if it is that, I don't think it is, but that can easily be adjusted. Right now, I've got 12-inch letters.
But it's the total glass, so I don't think.
Yeah, you're good.
It's your total glass facade, so you're not.
Oh, yeah, there's
never
more
gonna hit
glass
it.
down
Yeah,
below.
you
so-
got more below,
Yeah.
That's why I didn't bring it up.
And those windows below are just for displays, probably seasonal as we go on. Like any display window, really. And then if you look on the right-hand side, I want to add, I have a little hanging sign. There's an
blade-
existing
the blade
wrought
sign?
iron thing there. So that's just direct printed on wood with the same fonts, Apea Libre and Varela Round, and then there's an Arial there's an Arial blocky one for the letters in the window there.
Is that the new books font?
Yeah.
I like that font, by the way.
Yeah, I do
Did
too.
you mess
There's-
with the spacing?
Yeah, it's like 100, it's about a 200 point spacing.
No, because it's got a real Ed Rucha vibe. I like it.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like this design's based on a lot of old bookstores, kind of just do this. The other thing that I wanted was, when people walk into our bookstore, they often say it feels like we've been there forever. So I kind of wanted the facade, like a lot of the signs on the block are sort of these hanging metal things, and I wanted the facade to sort of underline that feeling that we've been there. The same thing people get when they walk in the store.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Looks
and
great.
Far better than Snooki. Motion to approve.
Motion.
Motion by Karen.
Seconded.
Second by Len. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you for your patience.
Good luck.
Thank you. Do I get anything in writing, or is it just like a handshake and we're good?
It's, Bruce may have a hearty handshake for you.
Can I start, I'm going to hire King Street to do the painting. Can I do that right away, or do I wait for the piece of paper?
We'll give you something, the approval, the next day or two.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate it.
Good luck.
And thanks for staying awake for it.
Welcome. Yes.
Thank you.
10:18.
It's not, I thought
I
this was
know.
going to be way worse. I don't know, like.
Yeah, it started off okay.
Bruce, is that?
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes, a motion to adjourn by Karen. Second by Randall. All in favor? Aye.
Not to, not that it's a big
Thank
deal,
you.
but is that sign already there?
Is it which?
No, it's not.